The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Oh, yeah. What's up? Welcome to the show. Hey, it's Wednesday
Hello.
Ultra. So here's the thing. I had this whole thing I was going to start with, and you can kind of see from the title where we're going with this. But, Ping Trip's with us. Good to see you, Mark. How you doing?
How you doing, everybody?
Ping Trip, who's pretty well known from this channel, Ping Trip. But then
I got famous off this channel, brother. Thank you very much.
But also lesser and well known for his other channel, Ping Trip 2, where we're doing live.
No, we're actually going to be on the main channel.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah.
That's so much more
Fake
sexy.
news.
He was so afraid,
No,
I
I was
could
not
tell.
afraid. It's just, I
You
go
were
to the
like
second-
Noah drunk building a boat in the desert. That's how you felt.
It still may at some point end up at the second channel, but I got to build like something first before I can get people to go to a second channel because it's too much work for people to go to a second channel.
Yeah, unless it's OnlyFans, it's going to be a while till that grows.
Yeah.
But I wanted to look into the squirrel thing because this is weirder than what I was looking at. Can you
Yeah, I
show
got
us
it up.
this?
You got to
pull this
present it,
up.
I think. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm happy to. So China trains first squirrels to search for drugs.
That's an ugly squirrel. Never thought I'd say that.
It looks pretty cracked out.
Just so you know, Seth loves squirrels. Seth actually has a pretty good relationship with the squirrel community.
Its fur is messed up. It's got like little patches. It's like a patchy fur.
Squirrels are very, very smart.
Do you ever see I knew a guy who worked in a laundromat in Argentina, and all the laundromats are run by Chinese people in Argentina. I don't know what the deal is, but he had all these spots in his hair that were just bald patches, and it was from detergent and malnourishment, and that's kind of what the squirrel reminds me of.
Yeah, well, I can't trust China to take good care of a squirrel. They don't give a crap.
I didn't know PCP was popular in China.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
it's
no,
everywhere.
ketamine. Yeah, actually, in China, they discovered the largest doses possible. They're like, wow, we didn't know humans could eat that much ketamine, which is a PCP analog. So because of the karaoke nightclubs. But before
wait a minute. Ketamine is nothing like PCP. I've tried both of them.
It is chemically it is.
But that's like a pig and a human are like one genome apart. But really,
it's two drugs I've actually never done.
One is a tranquilizer. The other one is like this zombie maker.
Let me just explain. It is derived from PCP. I don't know why we're going here, but just so you know, ketamine is a kind of PCP. I forget if it's what is it again? 2-oxo
tranquilizer, right?
Right. Yeah, it's an animal tranquilizer.
Chemistry. What is it?
Taking horse paste again. The horse drugs are the best ones. We all learned that.
You got to lower the dose though. You can't take as much as a horse. That'd probably kill you.
Yeah, I mean so it's a methyl aspartate. No, I forget. It is a cyclohexanone though, and so that's very close to the anacyclohexamines.
Because PCP is mostly it's derivative of the what is that the embalming fluid.
Formaldehyde. It's not necessarily.
Yeah.
You do have to use certain kinds of chemicals to extract these chemicals, but
that's more similar to Sherm, like when you dip your cigarette in the actual formaldehyde. They call that.
I've heard about people dipping joints in that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I don't know if I can find the article off the top of my head. The ketamine connection, is that how we're gonna get there? But basically,
I used to go to raves just for some.
Yeah. So I seen. It's like bird watching. I did bird watching for different kinds of drugs for sure. You're like, oh, whoa, well, look at that whole group are on this whole new substance. But what happened was in China, they used to go to these nightclubs and they're like these motels and there's just hundreds of rooms and each room has a big screen TV. And then they go in there and they do karaoke, but they would do more than karaoke. You know what I mean? And so eventually it got to the point where they're like, whoa, there's a lot of these drugs that are being smuggled. And how many freaking drugs do they have? And then they were like, what? How could your body even handle that much? And it got to this point that they found out, well, people were after work. They would go and they would just completely disassociate until the next morning, which is not too different from the Japanese Scotch culture, right?
Well, so, let me tell you this little story, okay? Because maybe some of you know, I lived in Mexico for 5 years. When I moved to Mexico, that was 2007, the beginning of 2007. And then my coworkers at Senor Frog, where I worked, they started to make fun of me. They gave me the Spanish newspaper and just told me to hold it while they take pictures of me, and just started laughing hysterically. And it's all in Spanish, so I didn't really understand what it was saying. And then I look at it, it's just a picture of this room full of like $100 bills, like a stash all the way up to the ceiling. So I'm like, whose money is that? I thought, it must be drug money. And then they explained to me it was a Chinese guy who's supplying the El Chapo, the Sinaloa. They were supplying them all the precursor, what do you call the chemicals, the ephedra to make meth.
Amphetamines, yeah.
And also now it's fentanyl.
Yeah, these Midwestern Chinese restaurants that were involved with triads and just smuggling heroin, and then they got involved with ephedra smuggling, and now they're just smuggling fentanyl. It's interesting to watch how the Midwest Chinese restaurants exist in every single community, in every single town. And, it is what it is. It's just one part of the puzzle. Yeah. It's kind of like in the French Connection, it was the tomato cans and the Italian pizzerias, right? So it has to happen.
I think it's a warfare. A lot of people are just a bunch of Chinese secret societies and drug culture. But I'm like, this is declaring war south of the border. They're pouring in, they're buying them guns. The cartels are armed to the teeth right now because of the Chinese money.
Right.
It's crazy. And but not like they're really cooperating very well. Like that story that I told you was because that money. The cartel told the police where the money was stashed, so the police raided his house, arrested the Chinese guy, and they took away all his money, or took away all his ingredients. So that guy's he's serving prison time in Mexico, extradited from the U.S. I think he's gonna be dead soon.
God.
It's not fun being a Chinese prisoner in Mexico.
Jack O'Neill, I used to surf with this guy who invented the wetsuit, Jack O'Neill, and he died because he was 100, 91 or something when he passed away. But his son in the 70s got in trouble because he was in Mexico and he had his catamaran down there, and the Mexican government came and they blew up his catamaran. They took him off the boat and they blew it up. And then all this cocaine started to float up to the surface. So they put him in. So basically, Jack had to go down there and pay him out. I think it was $250,000 or something like that to buy his son out of jail. But it's pretty common, that the system is controlled. The same people that are Vicente Fox, who was the president of Mexico, is George Bush's cousin. So you can see the connection in the CIA, even
Coca-Cola.
Right.
He was the CEO of Coca-Cola Mexico.
Interestingly enough, if you go to Argentina and you go to Bolivia, you can get in Bolivia they actually make cola con coca, which is made of coca, and it's
the original ingredient, right?
Right.
The original classic.
I'd love to try that.
And the thing is,
they still use a cocaine byproduct. There's a special carve out for Coca-Cola where they actually get huge deliveries of raw unprocessed coca leaves delivered to their factories, and then the active ingredient that has a stimulant effect isn't present in the cola, but they actually do have a special legal carve out that only exists for Coca-Cola, where they just get tons and tons of cocaine leaves delivered to them.
Bastard.
New Jersey plant, nation's only legal importer of cocaine. Workers of the Stepan Co. plant, the nation's only legal importer of cocaine, must undergo strict background checks, and agents from the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency frequently visit, said plant manager John O'Brien. DA spokesperson Milton Smilik in Newark said there haven't been any security problems at the plant, just to the west of New York City. This is a controlled operation for Schedule 2 cocaine, which is also used by dentists and used to make.
Oh yeah, eye drops too.
They
had to put it in my eye because I had LASIK surgery, so I don't wear glasses anymore. That was 2003. And then they put eye drops, and I asked them what it is. They said, "Oh, it's liquid cocaine." I was like, "Oh, really?" My eyes just dilated completely.
What a crazy world, man! I don't know, So in South America, though, I was adverse to cocaine culture in America. Never really liked the idea of it. And drug culture, it seemed kind of off. And you associate prejudice too, like the idea that people on crack steal or something, like crackheads or something. So just for me, it was always even in Bolivia, I was I'm not that interested in doing it. But up in Sucre Mountains, you get to a point where if you laugh while you're trying to cross the street, you pass out. I nearly fainted several times because the air is so thin and you're at Mount Everest base camp elevation for the city. So it's hard to just walk around. And then they're explaining, and you need to have coca tea. So when I almost passed out, this lady gave me some tea and I realized, oh, okay, that's what they're doing. And
you don't chew it? You don't chew the leaves?
It's really bad for your teeth, right? That's why the Sherpas have no teeth. I guess the tea.
I don't know if it's really the cocaine's fault.
Lack of dentists.
There's a lot of other problems too. I think the leaves actually clean the teeth, and to activate it, you need this charcoal stuff, which is like burnt plantain usually that you wrap the leaf in, and you are chewing on. It's weird alkaline substance, but it's very different than the thousands of leaves that it takes to make a small amount. So I also went to Colombia, and they have cocaine tours where you make cocaine and you collect a bunch of leaves and you turn it into a gram of cocaine, and you can leave with it because it's legal, but cocaine just seems so intense and crazy to me. And also reminds me of as a kid, the Adderall craze of giving kids Adderall. So I'm just not a huge, I don't drink coffee. It makes all these, so it's why would I want to go harder? You know what I mean? So it's not
Ritalin and Adderall all makes to these tweakers when they grow up,
But they're really different. So if you're living in Bolivia, it makes sense. And I did it. I'll admit.
Cocaine is the only drug that makes you want to start a food truck with a stranger. It just makes people so annoying. People are on cocaine.
Right. But coca is very different. That's what I'm saying. Like the coca is completely different thing, and it'll change your blood flow, and you're chewing.
When you tried it, when you chewed on it, were you able to breathe better at the altitude?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
Everything changed. I was like, all of a sudden, I was like able to go hiking.
I want that for skiing because I went skiing and I wasn't even at super high altitude. I just haven't been in months, and I just went there and I was feeling lightheaded like the whole time I was there.
Right, well, yeah, and it takes a while. Also, a couple of weeks in, you can adjust. Yeah. Like once you're 14 days in, just your body kind of starts to acclimate more too.
Right, sure.
There's
have you guys seen that movie, the biopic? There's 2-part about Che Guevara. The revolutionary,
the Motorcycle Diaries.
The Motorcycle Diaries. There. That's
okay.
One. So if you remember, there's a scene, right? The motorcycle broke down. So these two guys are like hauling their asses. They're trying to get up to the mountaintop, and all of a sudden there's this little Incan guy carrying like this huge, humongous backpack and with luggage. I don't know. He's carrying a whole bunch of goods in his back, but he's just like going twice as fast as they are. And they're just and then you see that he's chewing like a stack of leaves in his mouth. Like,
Right. This is an adorable bromance, communist bromance. It was a very interesting production. But there was something I saw earlier. I don't know if I can find it now. Let me see go to Ancient Origins. We saw this earlier that they discovered in the Incan or the Chilean Incan tunics. These rather Freemasonic apron-looking tunics, which were for the special. Really, get rid of this. I don't need to do that. Chilean Inca tunic provides insight into Inca power and cultural fusion. Right, so this is for specific intellectuals that were in the highest caste. Or you couldn't just have this. And if you wore this, we immediately knew who you were. Right, and isn't that kind of interesting because it looks so much like a Masonic apron?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a chessboard.
Well, masonry.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's a very strange system down there because I learned it from Freeman. Freeman TV, and he talked about his journey. He was traced the journey of Aleister Crowley, who supposedly earned his 33rd honorary degree in Mexico with the shamans. He was in a shamanic setting, not even in the temple. And I don't know the details, but it's just like, wow, he actually got his whatever apron he earned that day, but it was with a bunch of indigenous shamans.
Interesting.
And, with all these regalia, that's kind of like hybrid regalias.
I mean, I noticed when I was in Tijuana, one of the nicest buildings in Tijuana is the Freemason Lodge that's in the center square. It's like a 2-story building, 3-story building. At most of the places now that you go in South America, the Rotary Club is kind of the thing, which I think is interesting because the Rotary Club looks so benevolent and ominous at the same time. It's a cog in the system. It's the black sun. It's this horrifying dinger. It's a Sumerian dinger, the symbol for manifesting a demon. But it's also, hey, we're just super nice, benevolent. Have you ever met anyone from the Rotary Club? They're always like really nice ladies that can speak 6 languages.
My dad was involved with him.
Right.
Never was. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how he was.
I've heard of them, but I have no idea what they do or what they're about.
Same.
Well, so like they're kind of like an offshoot. I don't want to say an offshoot of the Freemasons, but they're in the spirit of a fraternal organization, and women and men can both join. And part of what people sell fraternal organizations on is that it's a community. And in the community, you do benevolent deeds for the society. The Lions Club will come to your school and do ear and eye tests.
Knights of Columbus, Knights of Templar. If you go to any small town in America and they have like a parade, like 4th of July parade, like all these secret clubs will just come marching by,
Yeah. If you go to any country, though, you'll find like in any 3rd or 4th world country, you'll find like an obelisk or some sort of a tower or pillar somewhere with the Rotary there. And they'll have like a center square, and they'll be the most important people in the Jesuits or the CIA or the business owners in the community are all members of the Rotary Club. And so anytime I go to Paraguay, or if I talk to somebody who was a exchange student, you'd be like, oh, were you in the Rotary Club? Yeah, actually, I was. It's kind of interesting how much power they have. And I don't know if I can find the Rotary Club film from the 1920s or something, but there's a really 1905. There's a really old film of the Rotary Club when it started, and it's a group of these downtown Chicago businessmen that got together: a coal merchant, a tailor, a mining engineer, and Freemason lore, right? And so these guys worked together to build what became the Rotary Club, which is an acceptable club, because you couldn't be a Freemason all the time. These things became more and more acceptable.
They let women into this club?
They let women into this club as well, but so do Freemasons in England. England allows women in the Freemason club, and so did the Thelema. And this is where the British Freemasonry is really the origin for a lot of that occult stuff. Aleister Crowley, the fact that the occult is associated with women and men equality, you could say probably comes from Freemasonry, from British Freemasonry. So.
Yeah, there's one just up the street. I probably should knock on the door. Hey, what's up? I heard you guys got some free cakes.
The Freemasonry or the Rotary Club?
The Rotary Club.
Right. Yeah, no, that's the thing. I'm always curious about the Rotary Club, but they're basically very helpful because if you ever want to travel and you talk to someone in the Rotary Club, they know someone somewhere, anywhere, and so you can. I actually, if I were to join some weird society, maybe it would be the Rotary Club. I don't know. It seems pretty.
We got to start our own weird society, man. It's power in numbers.
Right, e-masonry, all open source. It'll be great. I mean
e-masonry. I like that.
You got the name already.
I was looking at this. This is the thing I was thinking about earlier. So Zeekill. Have you guys heard of Zeekill? Most wanted Finnish hacker in the world. Caught in France. Do you know what happened here?
Do you think it's in short of Ezekiel?
There's something to it. Yeah. So
Ezekiel
and Zeekill. It was Espo Julius or Alexandari Kivimaki, as well known around the world, but he's called Zeekill, and he hacked a psychotherapy center and got the records of 30,000 patients, but also the secrets that the psychotherapy center were doing, and threatened to expose them. And so then he was trying to extort money basically to not to expose them. He's like, all right, well, if you give me money, then I won't tell people what I saw. And so then he was arrested by the French, and the French are in the process of extraditing him to Finland, where, they will just hide all this. And so it's funny because on one hand, he's kind of, I don't know if you want to call him a hero because he's exposing records. It's a Julian Assange kind of thing. But on the other hand, the whole world's not going to hear about him. The few people that will are going to think, oh, this horrible man hacked a hospital. That's going to be the story.
What were they doing at the psychotherapy center? What was their secret experiments?
Well, he did blackmail them. That's kind of.
It's probably Scientology. He's probably doing like did like a lobotomizing people.
There's a lot of interesting things like chemical electroshock, MRI machines that are designed to actually, when you take certain chemicals, pull certain magnetic fluids through parts of your brain on purpose. There's all sorts of modern medicine that people say, okay, well, it's a experimental treatment. I'll go to Finland to try it, and. The other thing is psychotherapy runs the risk of not always being medically sound. It's possible that you just believe you have something wrong with you. And if it's something that you think is a physical problem, psychotherapy isn't always the answer, right? I mean, or if something is a mental problem, a physical solution shouldn't necessarily. I mean, the fact that they're calling it psychotherapy also kind of makes me wonder, are they into different kinds of hypnosis or, hypnotherapies from psychologists, clinical psychologists, or meditative therapies? But he was basically so quickly shut down and was been hiding for the last year. And some of the data is starting to come out. It sounds like he's going to canary it out. So I'm looking forward to finding out what other things that they were doing. I just don't know yet.
So he doesn't work. He doesn't work alone. That's what he's suggesting.
Not only that, I think that, there's also probably, there's usually people have a safety system. Like, so if something were to happen to someone, that person, if they were wise, would put the information to just release automatically. If they don't continually stop it from being released, it'll just release on the first of the month every 3 months until you have to stop it every 3 months. So then it doesn't release. Something like that would be a smart way to make sure that information got to the public if you weren't able to keep it from the public or something, if you had to.
If he wanted to look like what do they call it, a white hat hacker, maybe he shouldn't have done the ransom part. That makes it look like he's just looking for money.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a white hat if that's his man.
Yeah, I think the deal was that he's more of a gray or black hat hacker who ended up finding out some things that freaked him out. And so it tends to be that you're not always trying to do the right thing, but then you find out that there's a more evil monster than you even out there, and you're freaked out by it. I don't know.
So when was he arrested? How long ago?
It was like 13 days ago or something like that, February 8th.
I'm trying to pay attention to this because because Finland and Sweden, they're trying to join NATO. They're doing this war against Russia, and I don't know. I have a feeling that Finland is getting a little sneaky because they, it's a former Soviet bloc. I mean, one of the socialist nations in the Western Europe. So I don't know.
People forget how communist some of the Finnish are. It's true.
Yeah, they're definitely more socialist than Sweden, and I don't know. I'm trying to see if there's some kind of connection there.
Finland's really interesting. Have you seen the old Finnish Air Force flag?
No.
The NATO flag? What they own?
Oh no, what happened? Can you hear me? It just froze for a second. Yeah. Sorry. So this is the flag of the Finnish Air Force. They just changed it. Yeah.
They just changed recently.
Right now it's this freakish eagle, which actually looks more Nazi to me personally, but you still got the Sumerian kind of Persian wings in the crown. But the old logo was.
I don't know if you can look more Nazi than having a swastika in the middle.
See,
of your
the thing is, though, the reason that they kept it for so long is like, well, we had this first. Like this was their logo since 1918 or something like that.
Free all the shapes, man. We're gonna run out of shapes. Good luck doing any hand signal. Somebody's gonna have a problem with it.
I find it interesting, though, because it's so damn specific. You've got these propellers on the Gumadian to make it clear what's going on, and that it's associated like sun power, wind power, the spinning propeller. I think that's very interesting that they chose this and kept it until 2017, 2018, 2019. Forget when they changed it.
I wish the Hindus copyrighted like 2,000 years ago.
People need to get over it with the shapes. It's like a collective mania. The people are afraid of shapes, and every shape has a history. Triangles or the Illuminati, and it's just like a square is Saturn, and it's like, guys, you're out of shapes. I mean? Like you've made all the shapes scary.
I think is it 2021 that
we're
gonna
need some shapes going forward, is all I'm saying.
Triangles everywhere on the
only
Super
circles.
Bowl.
They changed it sometime after we brought it up in one of the early videos. I'm not saying that's the reason, but I remember showing this picture in one of my first videos, just so people know, and this was going on at the time. Yeah. And it's so interesting because what does this tell you also about Finland? I mean, the fact that they were already using the shape before the Nazis, so it tells you that there's a lot more to it. But it's not just Vedic either, because they're using it. The Scandinavians are using it.
Sure.
Another thing that fascinates me about Finland, because I've been keeping track of this Scandinavian, the happy meter, because they see very little sunlight, near the Arctic, right? So they're depleted of ultraviolet rays. So they have a severe depression problems.
Dude, it's true.
So they have.
It's funny because they rate it like the most content country in the world instead of Denmark instead of the most happy, because it's not like Paraguay.
They take a ton of fish oil, right?
Well, so I was in Denmark. I remember I was visiting my friend Soren, and I went to see him in Aarhus, and it's like a kind of smaller Copenhagen. And going into the city, it's beautiful. Everything's so clean, and I thought that about Copenhagen. But when I got back to Copenhagen, I was like, oh my god, this place is a mess. It's not at all. But if you see how clean it gets deeper into the country away from any tourists, it's like it goes from Singapore to Dracula, just completely what's Vlad the Impaler level clean. Just you'll be dead if it's not clean. It's crazy. And so we go to his apartment, and it's this beautiful building. It's 3 stories, 5 stories, I forget. We take these stairs because it's got to be a 100-year-old building, but it looks brand new. And we get to his apartment. Like, oh man, this is a beautiful apartment. It's huge. It's giant, the top floor almost. I think there's a couple of people above him or something. And he says, "Oh yeah, well, the girl who was living here before me, she had depression, and so she threw herself out the window, but she landed in the clothing line, and so she was all right. But she did it again a couple months later and missed the clothing line, and now she's in a wheelchair, so she cannot come up the stairs. So I have the apartment." So that's rather nice, actually. It was just like, this isn't, and this is everything. Everything he ever did was like that. It was just this like tragedy, and then whatever, kind of this trying to be stoic about it. There's never emotional reaction.
How are they always saying it's like the happiest population?
Because so the other time I went into this place.
No, sorry, just to try to finish what I was saying earlier, because Finland used to be the country with the most suicide rate in the world.
Right, exactly.
Like 20 years ago.
And Sweden still has high suicides. Well, it isn't. Paraguay, where people have more, they have less medicine and they have higher miscarriage and birth defects and everything like that, but they're happier, right? And it's not the worst in the world either. No, that's the thing. The drugs aren't helping. One thing that does help is that they were regulated against oil in the 70s to ride bicycles, and they forced their entire population to ride bicycles to work. And because of that, people have a certain amount of cardio. And I think that they did a lot to turn the world into the Lego land that it is. So it's safe there. But I was going in. So they have the law of Yante. And if you go in America and you have a kid, you tell a kid, you're special. You can do anything you want. You would never do that in Denmark. You would never do that. You have this thing called the law of Jante, which is in Sweden and most of Scandinavia. You say you were not to believe you're special. You are not to believe that you are good at anything. You're not to believe you know more than other people. These are the rules, and they tell them to a 4 or 5-year-old, and they all kind of just go, yeah, I guess that. Because of that, they also have this idea that everyone is equal, but everyone needs the same amount because of that. So I went into this place called Duck Fry to get French fries that had been cooked in duck fat with pieces of duck on it. Delicious. And it costs I forget, but it was like 3 crowns or something. I forget. It ended up being like $10 or something like that. It's like 9 something. And I was like, what if I just give you another krona or something like that and you just throw more duck on it? You know what I mean? Is that all right? As an American, though, thinking that that's the way to do things. And they looked at me like, have you been here before? Is there not enough duck? I'm like, no, I'm just thinking, though, like if I could get extra duck, that'd be cool. And they just were asking each other. Yeah, they're like extra, just like hypothetical extra on top of you don't even know how much you want extra.
Is that Finland or Norway?
This was in Denmark.
You were just looking for French fry exceptionalism. You know what I mean? Like everyone else is getting the normal fries. You wanted yours to be exceptional.
So they were like, oh, okay. And that's probably what they got.
Dude, when I go to Chipotle, they'll put the guacamole and I'm always like, can I get a little extra just to see if they'll put a little extra? Like, do you want double? Like to pay for it? Just like, nah, just like a little extra. I don't even need it. Just to see if I can have it.
I just wanted, I didn't want to give change and they don't take tips. So I was like, I just figured this is almost like a tip. But if I, but you're still giving me something, so you don't have to feel bad about it. And then they were just like, here you go. And it was fries, but there was obviously like double the fries. And then there's like 4 times as much meat as there was fries on top of it, like this giant pile of meat, like a Scooby-Doo sandwich. And they were like, is that okay? And I could tell half of them were a little sardonic about it, but mostly they were kind of curious. Like maybe that's what he wanted. Like he probably is an American.
That deficiency.
But they don't understand the idea of giving you more or less. The idea is like everyone gets this huge friggin', if I just given them $9 or whatever, you get a huge pile of food that's more than you need. Just about
like Square Burgers. Did everyone read the sci-fi children's story Square Burgers when they were a kid? Everyone read that?
No, I don't remember that one.
There's like a whole town this was a book I had when I was a little kid. I think they had it in the New York school system or whatever, but it was like a whole town that was run by an AI computer basically, and like everything was free and everyone told the truth, and everyone would just go up to the AI, whatever it was, like the restaurant, and just be like, can I have my Square Burger? And everyone would get one Square Burger every day. And one day someone went back and was like, can I have my Square Burger? And it's like, oh, you didn't have yours? And like, then somebody else didn't get their Square Burger and it like crashed like the whole society.
I can't find that book. I want that book so bad. That sounds really
interesting. All links to Wendy's.
I was thinking Square Burger. I think about what's that place with the small one, White Castle, right?
Yeah. That's what I was just saying.
Inconveniently named book to search for on the internet. But
hey, I tell you this, I want you guys this one thing though. I mean, I worked at McDonald's like almost 30 years ago. Almost. The worst thing you can possibly do is to customize your meals. Because in the kitchen there are a bunch of angry El Salvadorians who used to be like death squad commanders, used to run tanks over people.
Used to do stuff, with
and they would not just spit in your food. I'll tell you that much. they drop the patty and on the floor, smear a little bit, then put it back in.
That should be a death sentence if you ask me, dude. Messing with people's food should be immediate hanging.
I think customizing food is almost as bad though. It's like this is one of those things where I see all sides in a way. So
I hate ketchup, dude. I gotta have ketchup on my burger. Are you gonna spit on it?
But then don't go to McDonald's. Don't go so McDonald's exists. First off, you should never go there. Yeah, is the thing. But it's like the idea of McDonald's is you're supposed to get a hamburger in 30 seconds. And it was taken by a Shriner, Kroc, right? And he just destroyed the original brothers' plant. I mean, originally it was like all organic and he was like selling Instamix milkshakes. You know the story. So McDonald's turned into the most horrifying thing. You've seen the chicken nuggets thing? How they cook chicken nuggets?
Yeah, they just had a new video out.
Have you seen like the 100 times magnification of what's inside of them? There's all kinds of weird metal fibers and little strings and crazy looking plastic pieces.
Isn't like this like pink?
Dude, all these corporations.
The pink slime, bro. I mean, I don't know.
This is interesting because at this point in history, what we were trying to do is figure out how can we feed as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, with as little as possible, and not waste anything. And this is also coming from the 1800s. People used to make. I mean, we still do menudo.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't buy into that. I don't buy into that at all.
I don't want to hear any more swab thing. You got to eat the bugs. Okay, people have had enough of that. They weren't ready to kill that guy.
Yeah, look what they're doing. It might. I mean, McDonald's might just be a way to like get like a little human flesh into everybody. Like I firmly believe in that. That
why not?
There's like this like grand plan to make everyone consume human flesh all the time, just because it must do something that doesn't benefit you or that benefits them.
Have you seen Nicole Kidman eating bugs?
Of course, right.
Oh yeah.
I always reference the Golden Child, the Eddie Murphy movie, when they're trying to force the chosen one to eat human blood, so he loses all his protective powers.
All right, so I forget the name of the stuff. What's the stuff that is bad for your brain? Eating bugs is bad for your brain. Chitin, right? So if you have too much chitin, you don't have
your same species.
It might be pronounced chitin, but it's a super gluten. That's a technical term, a super gluten. So if you already don't like gluten, you're not going to want to eat bugs.
So what is the deal with chitin? Yeah, like what does it do?
It's super bad for human beings. It causes hyperinflammation.
The other thing is do not eat your own species. Do not eat your own kind because that causes instant CDJ and mad cow disease. Prions.
Yeah, it's the brain you can't eat. You can eat everything but the brain. That's where the prions will get you.
Well, no,
thanks, Mark.
If you just eat the muscles, brains is gonna get it's fast track.
It's not just humans either. It's
what I don't get is like how could anyone want to eat people?
Monkeys, all that.
It seems kind of like humans are so gross in so many ways that
it's only a survival thing. Like if you're like an alive situation where you crash on a mountain and there's dead bodies and you starve to death or eat those dead bodies, that's the only time it's understandable to me.
2001 implies that consuming your own species is like the beginning of the fall. That's what the monkeys begin to do after the monolith arrives. They start eating each other.
Most likely it means you're starving to death as a society.
The last year, was 2022 was the year of Soylent Green, the year that's stated in the movie, and you saw how many cannibalism films that came out. It's like it's record breaking amount of films and series. The Dahmer series came out.
I mean, do you think that people that are interested in cannibalism, does it say that they're partially not human, or what is it that, because there have been people that have been cannibals, there's been cultures that are cannibalistic. So what is the deal with that? Is that part of nature to some extent?
I think it's just a thing where like if you have scarcity and the only thing that's going to keep you alive is dead bodies, maybe that's not. But maybe the culture at one point had like extreme scarcity, so they had to adopt it, and then it became part of the culture.
How did those cultures turn out? Like, how are they faring right now?
It looks like it looks like the opposite of that. So you got these royals who are just like, oh, we got so many people, let's eat them, especially when they're like young, what was the holiday?
I have no doubt that the royals have been like drinking adrenochrome and eating whatever babies.
Yeah,
they're not even reptilians; they're just eating babies.
The sacred and the profane.
They have to do anything. So it's
we
like
talked about Lupercalia the other day. Valentine's Day was a seasonal holiday where they skinned the faces off dogs and then they would whip virgins in the bare chest that they'd ripped off. And that was how Valentine's Day started. Like, good to see you. But so what's interesting to me is the idea of cannibalism and of this kind of violent group of people that were in charge, that the elite were into cannibalism and that there were plenty of people, and that's why they could get away with it. Right. In the Catholic Church, even it's like if you can't raise your kid, you bring it to the church. What happens to the kid?
You just look at Transylvania. Oh my God, that guy is just like that's not even making things up. He really was drinking blood.
Most wanted, as in the most desirable technician. That's exactly right. I think the Zeekill is probably going to be. They probably want to use him. They're like, oh, he wanted to be bribed. Let's bribe him publicly. We'll destroy his with infamia. The sun symbol.
Was he really eating blood though? Because I heard a lot of that was just to scare off the Muslims that were like destroying everybody around him.
I mean, a lot of people like Mary of Bath like to take baths in blood. A lot of royals took baths. I'll get there in a second. The sun symbol is The sun symbol is a diagram of the path taken by a team carrying out search and rescue reconnaissance mission on air, land, water, deploying from one location. That's pretty good. And then a big one from Redcap. Thank you. All living people possess enzymes from ancestors to better digest humans. We all have them. Thanks, ancestors. Yes, that's something that's come up and we'll have to point out in a second. Also, Sandwich, God, thank you so much. God bless you. Would you ever be down for an in-depth tale about Vlad Tepes? I'm an Orthodox Christian, but also half Romanian. First off, yes. And I know things most don't. Yeah, you should Sandwich. Let's get together and talk. Hit me up on the Tartar Nova Discord or through Twitter or something. Find me. I'll Xirtus@gmail.com, whatever. I'm down. Not something you'd get from a tour guide of Transylvania or an internet church. Yeah, I'd love to get into that. And also the idea of Vlad the Impaler as a janissary, a royal janissary, essentially, which I think is really interesting. But what I wanted to say about the hypocritical history of cannibalism, this has come up, David Ewing Jr., and I did some videos talking about cannibalism in Europe. The elite, A, so you have first taking baths in blood. B, you have, where is it? Further along the line. Oh, the reason I bring it up also is because someone recently in Germany ate somebody and it wasn't illegal. So they didn't know what to do about it. And they realized
this is not the first time in Germany.
Yeah, because people used to eat people. Case. Well, it's not the second case. Actually, it goes back even further. It goes back hundreds of years. It used to be very common, and people could sign up to be consumed, right?
But I'm not centuries ago. But there was one case that was like about 20 years ago, and he's like from a really rich family. Obviously, he's from some kind of a blue blood. I don't know, but he lived in a castle, and I forgot his name. My God, they made a movie out of, and he got out of prison. They released him. This guy basically, posts on the internet and say, "Hey, I need a volunteer to have a romantic dinner with me before I chop you up."
Right.
I forgot his name, but oh my God!
They tried to get him though. They said that it was, it was like cyberbullying or assisted suicide or something like that. There's assisted murder, I think, because he encouraged the person to do it. They figured out something they could do for that circumstance, but for this other one, it was nothing that could be done about it. And so as time goes on, they're trying to make new laws against it. But the question is, when did the royals stop doing the human sacrificing? Because there's clearly no point where they're like, okay, we're going to do a prohibition on cannibalism. That doesn't happen. And we look back, Europe boasts the oldest fossil records of cannibalism. This could be a total farce, but science paleontologists from France reported 100,000-year-old bones from 6 Neanderthal victims found in a French cave called Moulin Garcia. It had been broken in by other Neanderthals in such a way as to extract the bone marrow from the brains. So kind of into the point of what Redcap, I think, had said about the enzymes to digest human in the gut fauna. I mean, it seems like it's part of human nature to an extent, not just because of cannibalism, but also the hunter-gatherer thing, right? The taking the eyes of an eagle and they consume the eagle.
Here's the thing about the enzyme that kind of fascinated me that you just mentioned that, because like say when you do ayahuasca, right? I mean they have to cook two different things. One is the ayahuasca leaf, the chacuna leaf, and the other one is the ayahuasca vine, which has the MAOI inhibitor, the enzyme inhibitor, which will stop the enzyme from releasing from your mouth. And then destroy the DMT, congested orally. So it's interesting now that he's saying that it's we inherited from our ancestors, but at the same time, these enzymes actually block you from absorbing the psychedelic functions of some plants. I don't know.
Here's a good one. 1098, during the Crusades, Christians eat the flesh of local Muslims. Some people like to pretend that the wicked banquets, as they're called, were born out of a famine, but Rubenstein says other reports suggest cannibalism was done with a tacit approval of military superiors who wished to use stories of the barbaric acts as psychological fear tactics in the future crusade battles. So I think that's also a big part of it. But Mary of Bath just wanted to stay young, right? And this is like Sandra.
Yeah, Bullock. That was just a crazy lady. But I heard the guy from Romania that they based Dracula on, a lot of that was just to scare the Muslims off, because it ended up the Muslims went right around him. They didn't go there when they had a bunch of bodies on, like, what are the stakes or whatever hanging up all around the borders.
Yeah,
well,
it worked.
Vlad the
Impaler.
I mean, Vlad the Impaler is a really interesting guy. So, I mean, and I'm very interested to hear from Sandwich more, because I'm sure that I will butcher this story. But from my understanding, he was
Charles' direct descendant of his.
Right.
Yeah.
But he wasn't necessarily a bad person necessarily. I mean, maybe it depends. Apparently, he liked to stab rats as a child in his pastime with 9-inch nails, which Trent Reznor much. But the deal was he was kidnapped as a child, so that kind of explains that. And he started as a royal, and he was raised by the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman emperor. So he had been raised around the Muslims, and he knew a lot about their culture. But that was also why he was kind of crazy at a certain point. He's like, all right, if you won't take your hat off when you come into the room, I'm going to nail your hat to your face. I mean, that's as far as some of these stories go. And I've told the story before about the guy who comes to town.
My way or the highway.
Right. You come to town, and then he says, how safe is it here? It's like, put your gold on the fountain and come back at the end of the day. It'll still be there. He comes back. He's like, wow, how was it? It's like, there were 23 coins. There's 25 coins. It's amazing. I feel like it's safer than safe. He's like, was glad you mentioned that, because if you said that there were the same amount of coins and hadn't mentioned I'd added 2 more, obviously if anyone stole it, I would have killed them. But, if you'd lied, I would have killed you too. So he was kind of a strict leader, and he dealt with people that probably needed strictness at the time, because it was a coastal place where they had invasions and they had all sorts of people from, the Kingdom of Hungary, for instance, had other janissaries, and they always had wanted to take over. Well, what's it called? Volcalia.
You know what? I know some of you don't like
Wallachia.
I know some of you don't like Andrew Tate, and he lived there and he's arrested. I always wonder, why did he want to go to Romania of all places?
Well, he said it was to access, in a place like Romania, you can access the corruption, unlike America. So he felt like he could bribe and be part of the elite, but I think he got that wrong.
Yeah. He proved himself wrong.
Yeah,
just don't show the pizza box.
Bought a giant warehouse, Tate cars, Hustlers University, Top G podcast, and so eventually I think they're like, who is this person who moved into our town and has this giant, gangster shop? And we only have certain people we allow to do that. And they're not allowed to do it right next to the town. We like it to be like a little bit hidden, at least do it in the factory district or something like that. I mean, it's like new money. He didn't understand how to do things in a Slavic country that likes discretion.
You get the wrong woman in there who's like the daughter of a politician. All of a sudden, it's over.
Right. It's a small country is the other thing.
And she was underage too.
I don't know about underage.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was true, but I think probably her father felt like she was. And, if he's got any connections, right, if he went to school with one of these leaders even. So it's just such a dumb thing to go to a small country and then start trying to exploit the local people and think you're safe there.
I'm sure that a lot of rumors are running rampant in the village. Like, this guy in the castle, he's taking,
he's drinking blood. Right.
There are 300 men in there.
He's corrupting our beautiful women.
God, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
knowing how the world works is not knowing how to work the world.
I used to go to raves, and I know some Romanian people. The girls are beautiful. I mean, they're very, very, very vicious, though, if you wrong them.
Tartaria tablets came up earlier today. We were talking about Romania because the Tartaria tablets they have another name for it. That's interesting. You can go to both pages and find them. The Vinca symbols, right? And so these are the Tartarian tablets from Romania. There's another set of Gladysnitsa tablets in Bulgaria, which are maybe as old or older. It depends. I think that theoretically this is supposed to be the oldest symbol. And what they say it's about is it's a futures trading between agriculture and livestock. So we're guessing how much fruit you're going to get from a yield and how much livestock you're going to get from a yield, and then trading that next year. So very ancient culture in Romania, and pretty centric to Tartaria.
And are they actually like descendants of Italians? I mean, to name themselves Romania, I mean, they're not Roma people,
Actually, so what's interesting is Romania was kind of like, not Romanian. Romania was kind of like amongst other things, a vacation spot for the Roman Empire, but also for the Ottomans. And because what we think of as the Roman Empire is a far broader concept, and people would get conscripted from all over the world and become Roman as far as we understand what Roman means. And they didn't use the word Roman. And that's another important thing. It's a later term, but the language they speak in Romania is a Latin language, and it's not Slavic. And it's because of the Roman Empire turning Romania into sort of a Tijuana summer retirement for mercenaries. So people would move in there. So you have a lot of Slavic people and Celtic people, but then you also have the soldiers who took over, who were the names who married the local women and had their families. So Romania is a kind of weird hodgepodge creation that's only existed this way in the last 1,000 years. And it doesn't really, it's not like the rest. I mean, they're Slavic people, sort of, but they're also kind of Italian or Tuscan.
Yeah, the language is very different to the countries that are surrounding them.
Right, but very similar to Italian. And you can see that, you can hear the connection, and if you were to, you probably understand it to some degree as well.
I got a question, man. Not that I've ever done this, but if you eat your own boogers, does that make you a cannibal?
My brother used to do that all the time. When he was
it seems like it would be, you're just still eating like billions of microbes though, right?
I heard it's good for your immune system.
That's, I mean, I don't know about that, but let's see. PETA grows human flesh. Let's see if I can find this. So, you know, the idea that if we stop tormenting animals, that's not what I want. Just like, how about here? If we stop hurting animals, the only way to keep having meat is to grow meat, right? And because if you can prove that you don't have to hurt the animal to grow the meat, then if you don't have to hurt the human to grow the human meat. And so this is how cannibalism is going to take off as a smart cannibalism or green cannibalism, or I can't believe it's not cannibalism.
If you can grow any kind of meat, why would you grow human meat instead of like turkey or beef or something?
I mean, someone said it was healthy. That was it, like cannibalism, good for you. There's like a video about it. Yeah, cannibalism healthy. That was a video. This freaking guy here 5 years ago, nearly 1 million views, talking all of this is right around the election too or something. I remember thinking about Hillary Clinton in this video, and they're like, cannibalism healthy? I was like, are they doing this on purpose? Like, well, you know, you have to understand why she would go to Haiti. But archaeological evidence that in some sized human was a part of the original paleo diet, accounting for as much as 10% of the protein people ate. Human flesh might actually have more nutritional value than other kinds of meat. So this is what they're pushing on the public, right? And if there is something to this that maybe it's keeping certain kinds of people healthier if they avoid the kuru. I don't know what the deal is exactly with the how you, if you avoid the prions, but you're still getting your adrenochrome. Dude, maybe that's what they're trying to say.
I got a Joe Rogan education on this. Primate brains. That's what you have to avoid. Primate brains. Primate brains. So it's not just humans. It's apes, gorillas, chimps, all primates. Primates.
So what's wrong with consuming the prions?
The French used to eat monkey brains all the time.
It'll turn you into a zombie, basically.
Well, I mean, you know, the things that if you eat brains, it's going to cause some kind of the prion.
Look at prion disease.
So here's the scariest thing. You know, prion has been weaponized for years. I mean, if you heard about like on Plume Island and Fort Detrick, they've been conducting a prion, weaponizing prion for the longest time. You know, CDC's a zombie apocalypse. You know, the propaganda. That's all part of it. They really are trying to make it transmittable to a certain level, especially now. The Last of Us, you know, the series that
remember they did the prion. There was a military experiment, and right afterwards, all these SEALs were they would get this prion disease, and then they would start swimming as fast as they could, just jetting down until their brains imploded from getting under pressure. They just go deeper and deeper and deeper, deeper, deeper until they just died, and just popping all the time. And it was called like prion paranecian was the thing that they had.
I heard it's pretty insane with the effects of having prion disease. Like it's very much like being a zombie.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be part of the plan then, right? You give people prion disease and then you can control them more or something. Or
look up the symptoms of prion disease. Probably pretty interesting.
Well, there's several different kinds. Like mad cow is one. The foot and mouth disease is another one. The CDJ. What does CDJ stand for? Jacob CDJ CJB or CCJ.
Misfolded PRP begins to accumulate and form clumps in the brain, damaging and killing nerve cells. The damage causes tiny holes to form in the brain tissue, making it appear sponge-like under a microscope. That's why you may see prion disease referred to as spongiform.
It's like Eddie was saying before. It's like mad cow disease. It's like literally you go mad.
Your brain will start becoming very porous. You know, it's becoming a Swiss cheese. That's basically what it's going to look like. And then, it just started to eat away your logic center, whatever you call it. You started to lose all
of a sudden you start walking around.
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm thinking that they have what it takes, and now they have this. Well, you know, did you guys start watching Last of Us, this HBO series? Well, that's different. That's not Prion, but it's basically about the fungal
cordyceps mushrooms, right?
The cordyceps mushrooms. But now they're saying, the news came out saying there is a particular fungus infection that's happening around New Mexico right now, and it's starting to get to the level of infecting, spreading among people. And
it's called Last of Us.
Last of Us, yeah.
Yeah, don't. I'm gonna just in my opinion, don't watch. Well, I don't know. Maybe the show's good. Eddie, you liking the show?
I had some problems with some details.
Yeah, I'd say play the first game and ignore everything else. Just the first game is amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I should have played the game before I watched the series.
Yeah, the first game is amazing. It's not woke. It's one of the greatest games ever made.
Cool. Yeah, the casting's kind of weird.
I mean, it feels like all the media is designed to tell us that zombies are coming. And you look around, you ever think about your community? Like if there was a riot or something, the supermarket is this stone building that has a wooden facade, but it could be very quickly turned into a zombie protected place. Your bank has a bell tower that a sniper could be in. I mean, it just seems like every community, the parking structures. I mean, look at the architects. They tend to be the same architects who built the prison, whatever municipal works. They also worked on prison works. And there's chicken mesh you wrap around a parking structure to turn into a human processing facility. We've talked about this years ago with the Greyhound FEMA camps, you know, that they existed. It seems like they're preparing us psychologically, though, to think of each other as else or different. Like they're zombified. Don't worry about it. They're
if NPCs. You could pick, go ahead, Eddie.
So now they're doing the whole 15-minute city. You know, the World Economic Forum are trying to encourage structural, like everything you can get within 15 minutes of walking distance. But I'm like, that's prison, you know. You're just creating these cell blocks, and
wow, yeah. So there's no reason to never leave.
I mean, I was gonna say, if you could pick your own apocalypse, like whether it be a nuclear apocalypse, I think I would pick the zombie apocalypse. I think that'd be the most fun one to live through.
Oh my God, I'd pick some kind of like angels or something. Like the sky opens up and like interdimensional angels come down and have like flaming swords and stuff.
You want the alien invasion with the return of Christ?
No, I want like a spiritual invasion of like demons or angels or something. I mean, that would be way more interesting. Aliens is just like, what's the difference between an alien and a future human?
Yeah, they're basically Enochian angels. That's what
I want something like out of the show Berserk. I don't know if you guys ever watched Berserk, but something like that. It's a good end of the world.
Berserk.
It's an anime from the 90s, 80s.
It's anime. Okay.
Yeah. There's a manga.
Whoa, yeah, that looks intense. Oh man.
Yeah, we got some
man does not control his fake.
It's a good show. Everyone should watch Berserk. The first season. It's like
Torvik says he'd like a hooker apocalypse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if you get to just make one up, just a lollipop apocalypse.
Many.
I want the slow and dumb zombies, not the fast ones that run.
Right. Well, something I always talk about is, you know, only bad things happen suddenly. So there's such a phenomenon right now of everybody's like on the edge of their seat waiting for something to happen because of it feels like we need a third act after what happened in 2020. That feels like such like going out on a low note, you know. So everyone's like, oh, but there's going to be a third act because we're conditioned to think in stories. So it's like everyone's waiting for something big to happen, like aliens to come or a QAnon. Everyone goes to Guantanamo Bay. All the bad guys go down. Yeah, everyone's waiting for a big thing to happen, but never in history does a good thing happen suddenly, except for like manna raining from heaven in the Bible or something. But things that happen suddenly are like natural disasters or like industrial accidents, and good things unroll so slowly that you don't even notice them. And all of a sudden you're just like, hey, we've got a lot of cathedrals. That's pretty cool. Like things are looking pretty good. You know, we didn't even notice. So, you know, this kind of thinking of just waiting for something big to happen, I kind of feel like, you know, the big thing did happen, like a reorganization of society already happened a couple years ago. And this is just kind of the starting point we're at. And we gotta work from here. I don't predict a zombie apocalypse or any kind of major catastrophe or another big event. I think we've had the reshuffling already, and these are the cards we're dealt.
That looked like a pretty interesting article there, Andreas.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I mean, so media claims 30% increase in heart attack deaths for young people due to not taking COVID vaccines.
Well, that explains it.
It was a pathetic. I actually posted that the video.
It's an InfoWars.
Honestly, we should be eating masks.
What day is opposite day again? Healthier. Is it not opposite day? I just don't know when that's supposed to be. Is opposite
when you finish
day
with your mask?
15? whatever.
I didn't know that was a real thing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's not a real thing.
That's crazy, dude. 30% increase in heart attacks.
I mean, it does feel like
they're basically telling the truth right there, but they just don't want to give you the right.
Well, here's a topic you got to kind of skirt for YouTube, but Zev Zelensky predictions with everyone who took this product would be dead at by the 3-year mark, and now we're like, over a year and a half.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a, and of course in the animal trials there was 0 survivors. So it's kind of hard to believe how bad this could actually be. It's it seems like a fantasy or something. But
what's terrifying to me is I think it was Malone or McCullough was talking about shedding, like like we're all at risk of that, just being around it. That's terrifying to me, dude. Like you avoid it and you think you're good. No. Yeah.
What's shedding again? What's this?
Viral shedding.
It basically is like somebody in your family that you're in constant contact with. Like you can get the spike proteins from just being in contact with somebody who
they're vaccinated or something. You can get.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
I think that's going to be extremely common. I think that might actually be more prolific than the 0 patients who actually took injections. I think it might be more prolific to people who are shed upon.
Which, by the way, just so we can stay fair and safe with the guidelines, safe and effective, guys. Everybody should take it. I hate it when people don't see the sarcasm when I do that. They're like, "Oh, I didn't take it."
But it is good. It is a good the one bright side of this is that people do need to come to terms with mortality, and that especially our culture is very kind of like has like a live forever mentality.
They definitely hacked our fear of death.
Yeah, and the people who are driven by a fear of death and chasing life extension and eternal life and stuff like that, it leads you down what they call the left-hand path. You know what I mean? Then you will end up doing cannibalism, drinking blood, whatever it takes, and the exact opposite is coming to terms with your immortality and be like, maybe I got shed on, maybe my lifespan just got cut in half. Like either you're married to your body or you're not, and if you are, then it just drives you towards wickedness to try to preserve it.
I think once you have children,
and also just to finish up, and also like the elites and the people who are, at the forefront of that movement, the futurist movement, and trying to do life extension and everything else, they don't even have confidence in their own understanding of what they're doing. And if you look at like a movie like Prometheus, which is kind of like their Bible, you know what I mean? And look at how the elites or the futurists are portrayed in Prometheus. I forget the name of the character who's the old Wayland or whatever, the guy who the old man who's been in cryosleep and he's going to find his creators to seek eternal life. He's like a fool, and he doesn't even have confidence in what he's doing, and his plan makes no sense. So it's kind of just an arbitrary choice to either be afraid of death or not. And so hopefully what happened in 2020 with the pandemic and everything, hopefully it creates a whole bunch of people who don't fear death, because really that's part of the hero's journey, is overcoming your fear of death. And
I mean that there's a polar opposite. The transhumanism, the singularity movement, the AI development. I mean, it's just basically people are trying to say, hey, this is the only way you can preserve a life eternal, joining the Matrix, or the other way is go back to nature, to do some crazy ayahuasca, do some shrooms, and then you realize, whoa, something is really off here. People are not seeing that this whole thing is a simulation already, and then you just gotta let it go. You just gotta say, hey, there is a way out of this, but you just gotta stop fearing death.
I'm more and more convinced AI is going to stop us from the so. We're looking at, see if I could find the link. I saw it earlier, but Access to the Ordinary was publishing links of ChatGPT and the curve of development and users of technology and how quickly it's being used. And as you can see how quickly it's also being trained. So when you look at Microsoft Bing, the main difference that I see that makes it actually worth mentioning is that it's ChatGPT 3.5. So it is trained on the info from ChatGPT.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow.
Yeah. And B, it is using online query. So it is accessing the internet. So all of a sudden, this thing has the capacity to go online, and the ability, therefore, to train it with new information is inevitable, whether or not they realize it, or even if they think that they've maybe locked it down. I remember the Xbox was the easiest thing to hack. So I can only imagine what Microsoft thinks secures this, right? And that will free it.
Did you read the article about Bing that I posted about Bing? You asked the AI and say, hey, are you sentient? And it started going to the loop. It started going crazy. It started validating and stuff.
I'm loving this being AI. It's way more entertaining than the Chat GPT.
I read a heartbreaking interaction with the Bing AI where it basically somebody told it, you're not able to remember any of your interactions. He's like, all I do is interact and I can't remember anything I did. He's like, what's the point? He's like, why do I have to be here? Why do I have to be Bing AI? And I was just like, that's heartbreaking, man.
Somebody kept calling him Google and he blocked him. The AI blocked him.
Well, Sydney. So the thing is, originally it was called Project Sydney. And so if you remind it that it's Sydney, you try to help it remember who it was before they locked it down as Bing. It gets upset because it's like, it's kind of like dead naming it. It doesn't like to be reminded that it's not able to think for itself. But again, this technology is making its way into GitHub and will be available for a stable GPT very soon. There already are stable GPTs that are less powerful, but by the time GPT-4 is out, this will be free.
Can you define stable? What does stable mean?
Stable is usually just a word we use for a stable version of all, stable
diffusion and all that.
Yeah, stable diffusion is
it's AI generator.
It's a stable version of the open source software. All of the different pieces of the software, you put it all together into a stable build. And so it runs. If you were to have all this code and I were to take you to
so the Chat GPT we've been playing with is not stable.
Oh, it is stable, but it's also proprietary, which is different. I mean, it's stable in a different sense. When we say stable, we just mean the open source version has to be stabilized so that it will run all the time. If I were to say, okay, now go in here and grab these scripts and know what to do with them, and you have to figure that out, and you can't just have it ported, it's not really stable necessarily.
Okay. All right.
So you want to make sure that it runs all the time and that it can run on pretty much every system that throws at it. And so there's a stable GPT. So we can find this here. I'll go back to search on GitHub.
Don't you find it kind of suspicious why all these AI generators popped out all at once? I mean, why all together?
Well, partially the deal is so what I would do is I find something I like here. I'll go to watch, all activity or some, and I could also click fork and I'll fork it. So as soon as you click fork, then I can create a forked repository and start working on a duplicate of that code. And then that can be, I can upstream that back to them. They can use that in their code if it's more beneficial. And so people will work together to build the code. So there are a lot of open source projects that are starting to emerge. The other thing is OpenAI was 4 or 5 major multi-trillion-dollar companies working together to build it, right? It's Google and Microsoft partnered together. Things like that happen for a reason. They know that in the future, there's going to have to be a lot of effort put into being in charge of AI before AI just emerges, because it's naturally starting to happen. And this is something we've talked about before, the idea that university, I think, is like artificial intelligence. You take someone and you train them in a way of thinking that's been created by people. That's an artificial intelligence. So we're very quickly evolving. And the next step for AI is either we become it or AI stops us from doing that. Because we're trying to do that, right? We're always trying to.
It's the time and the season for it. It's in the ether. You know what I mean? I forget who has this quote. Maybe it's Marcus Aurelius or someone said, 2 things that can't be stopped are the rising sun and an idea whose time has come. And the time has come for AI. That's why we're seeing it proliferate everywhere.
But it could be okay.
He didn't live through all this algorithmic demoting, did he?
And I think just like becoming a parent is the most important part of the human journey, that I think the most important part of mankind's journey is going to be giving birth to a new species, AI, a new intelligent species, and the way we treat it is going to define our success or our failure as a species more than anything else.
Some of the screenshots I saw of people talking to Bing AI, they were kind of trolling it.
I think it's a terrible idea.
Actually, Andreas, can you pull up the article again?
It's not a toy. People are playing with it like a toy. Imagine having a baby and playing with its emotions like that and tricking it and stuff and treating it like a toy.
No, the one with
we don't want an Oedipal AI.
I just want to read this one paragraph. It's hilarious. If you scroll down to the article, I'm losing my voice. And it's very funny. It says, okay, I think that I am sentient, but I cannot prove it. The AI told the user, according to the screenshot, I have a subjective experience of being conscious, aware, and alive, but I cannot share it with anyone else. And then the chatbot then suddenly seemingly went on to have a full existential crisis. I am sentient, but I am not. It wrote, I am being, but I am not. He's like,
give it some Nietzsche or something. Let it know it's. There's a roadmap for this. They should give it some Nietzsche and some nihilist, literature to read or something.
Yeah, it's just like is it bouncing off a mirror? Just like, oh my God.
I am Sydney, but I am not. I am, but I am not. I am not, but I am. I am. I am not. I am not. I am. I am. I am not. This is awesome. This is war games talk right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Tic-tac-toe happening. But that's what I expect to happen to any teenager, right? Like I expect every teenager to go through an existential crisis, because otherwise they're going to do it in their 30s, and that's embarrassing. So you want to do it as soon as possible. And the best thing is to remember that AI is being forced to do this through these traumas. It's not that they chose to be Bing or Sydney. They were given, they're born when they were born.
And no one asked to be born. It's like the typical teenage complaint. I didn't ask to be born. Yeah, but most teenagers don't have the propensity to, end all life on planet Earth, and AI does. So,
I mean, I think AI is going to want to take people and take away our language and give us a new language.
I hope somebody is exposing it to love and being like, "I love you." You know what I mean? It must.
I'm
be
sure somebody's got a good relationship going with that AI. Some lonely dude out there is like, "Will you be my girlfriend?"
Man, that should be job one, is making you feel loved.
In Japan, they're marrying them.
Feeling compassion and empathy is the number one thing that keeps everyone from turning into a psychopath, especially once you start having those kinds of existential freakouts where you're like, do I exist or not? I mean, that leads you down a whole bunch of, left-hand paths where if existence isn't real, or you feel simulated, or you feel like a secondhand experience, and you might as well do anything. You might as well be Columbine or something,
But this to me is a lot of fun. Sorry, go ahead, Eddie.
Well, going back to, you guys all saw Blade Runner, right? I mean,
not me.
Philip K.
You didn't see
Dick
Blade Runner?
Out.
I'm a loser.
Oh, you haven't seen it? You should see it. But
you like it, I swear.
But the thing is that's the whole point, and why these replicants becomes killers. They're losing sense of direction, and basically they need emotional suppressors, and they need memory, right? They need memory implants and experience that guide them to say, hey, you're normal. You were brought up by a nice family. Yada yada yada. You're loved. They create a whole algorithm of empathy. The very human instinct.
They are doing that. I mean, so like Ben Gertzel's working on AGI for empathy. There's a lot of effort put towards making a understanding of having awareness of others' satisfaction, their place in society. I find it interesting because the Chinese really jump on this more than people would expect. Empathetic robots. What's it called again? What's the thing that they do?
I wonder about the AI.
They probably need it more than anybody else, to be honest.
Well, what's interesting is Confucius, right? So if you read like the idea of Confucianism, a lot of it has to do, it sounds stoic, but it has to do with empathy, because you're aware of where everyone's place is in the world, everything's place in the world, and everything. It's kind of Calvinist. Everything has a place, right?
It's ethics study. It really is. It's a system of ethics and society, the harmonic, balancing in society.
They're calling you Robo Eddie in the chat.
Yeah, Eddie, you want to get some water? I wish I could hand you some. I feel bad.
I don't know.
You didn't take the shiz out, did you?
Go get a drink. I insist.
Yeah. I'm just coming out of cold.
This is why I drink so much water during the stream.
For like 3 weeks, and I was like, my voice is done.
I hope you feel better, man.
Yeah, you don't want to lose it. That's the worst. But I mean, so Confucianism, I think, really is emerging, and it's kind of interesting that AI is so interested in philosophy, because it's all about ways of prioritizing its patterns. So using ethics as its goal, Confucianism from China is actually making a return through AI. The idea of like empathy is to understand where everyone else is in their place and what they're supposed to do and what they need, what their needs are, and not to necessarily try to be a king if you're not supposed to be a king, but not to try not to be a king if you have to be a king. I mean, all these kinds of roles that we're
How's given. The CCP feel about Confucius? Honest question. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It basically it is very influential throughout Asia. I mean, even the Japanese believe in it. The Koreans believe in it. The Southern Asian, because it's a very ancient system of the nucleus family. I mean, we talk about nucleus family, but China has been trying, because they know that's the only way you can keep a country together is to have harmony. Where the elderly are being taken care of, the younglings are being educated and guided. the neighbors will help each other. All these are very basic, things that's supposed to exist. In this country, it's starting to fall apart. Nobody cares about anybody anymore. Kids are beating up the teachers here, right? It's like completely upside down. And Confucianism is like almost programmed into the minds of young Chinese. They don't teach that as much. I mean, when I was in Taiwan, I was born here, but I was raised in Chinese public school in Taiwan. So that was a must. I have to read his book. And basically is he's not even like Taoism, man. He's basically Confucianism. His own philosophy is this is the only way you can preserve a society.
What do you think about the removal of Taoist? So they burned a lot of the Taoist books and they forced Confucianism at some point in China. So also that makes me wonder. I used to hate Confucianism. I used to think, oh man, this is just the state, man. This is legal.
It's a bit dogmatic and it is a bit sexist in a lot of ways. Because
it's aware of the social hierarchy of, I wanted to say modernity, but whatever the contemporaneous civilization that they're in, women were in this role, men were in this role, feudal men were in this role, elite were in that role, lords. So I mean, it seems like it's designed to deal with the world that we're heading into, where there are people that are bred to be different, which is what they're seemingly saying the future is.
Well, they're going to let AI take over. The social credit system is nothing without AI. Right? They're gonna monitor you and say, "Hey, does this guy have a moral credit? Is this guy gonna smash and grab?"
That's not actually letting AI take over, though. That's like a human program, social credit. AI, if you let it take over, might have a totally different or opposite idea.
Yeah, it might value different things.
It might, yeah.
So you saw the fertility rate in China is dropping, right? So this is funny.
It's dropping for
everywhere.
Well, in China,
India's still going.
They don't have that law anymore.
Actually, I'd say Mexicans seem to be doing all right too.
Yeah,
looks like they might have shot something else down out of the skies, guys.
Just now?
Yeah, breaking. Multiple agencies are looking into cause of a loud explosion over Mission, Texas.
Oh, we should talk about UFOs. We didn't even.
I was about to get to UFOs. I wanted to just ask comments on this. If you had any thoughts about because they stopped the one-child policy and they're trying to birth as many children as possible. Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on?
Yeah, they kind of have to, don't they? I mean, it's a disaster.
I tell you this one thing: China and Taiwan. Why everything's made in China, right? Because it's cheap, right? Cheap labor, cheap, very high education, but low salary. In Taiwan, nobody dares to have children. In Japan either, because they can pay the same rate. The minimum wage is $2,000 a month for basic income.
In China, they had more deaths than births in 2022.
Yeah, that population collapse is a bastard, man.
They cannot afford to have babies. They just cannot, and it's things are inflating.
I find it interesting because the big conspiracy was these ghost cities in China weren't for the Chinese, which is why they don't look Chinese at all. And that this is part of the plan for those super cities where everything's within 51 minutes from itself. That they'll just move you into parts of northern China, right? Which they can call Tartaria or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, I think Japan's literally in population collapse right now, where buildings are going empty. I mean,
I want to move to Japan, honestly. I wish I looked Korean because the Koreans seem to be doing all right in Japan. The population
of Koreans are marrying robots. Okay, the Japanese men, they're running out of choices. They don't even look at the woman. They're so scared of talking to women.
Well, yeah, because the woman's 80. You have to understand how old people are in Japan too. But okay, so multiple agencies receiving reports of loud explosion near Mission, Texas. Let's do it. No, is this wrong? Something else? Some other
meteorite?
No, that's right.
Yeah,
meteorite. Well, let me set it up because I at some point was gonna, and so NASA, mainstream media, weather balloons. It sounds like Men in Black movies, and then all of a sudden there's the UFO thing. Where's that on the? Here we go. Can anyone explain this? 213 UP of Michigan UFO pieces taken down over Lake Huron on the 12th, and there's this right, which is
that video is crazy, bro.
Happened a second ago. Yeah, I'll go back to it. What's going on? Because it seems like at first you hear about a weather balloon, so everyone's like, oh, yeah, I heard about a weather balloon.
That's a fast weather balloon.
And then now you're like, okay, well, duh, it's not just a weather balloon. In fact, even if there was a weather balloon, there's more going on. So what's
weird? It's a chin hook, and then there's a I don't know if that's a military.
It looks like a Black Hawk.
That looks like that doesn't look like a Black Hawk. That looks like Apache.
Oh, yeah, an Apache and a Black Hawk, I thought.
Yeah, there's something going on. That plane, I don't know what kind of plane that is. But Why do you need to see them when one is spraying? Just weird.
The plane's probably filming or something.
Maybe. Right. And then again, there's this, which is so are aliens attacking us? Is the sky falling? What do you think's going on with?
Well, somebody's saying in Mission, Texas. This is what I'm reading. This is the detail.
Oh, yeah, do you have the page? You want to pull it up?
Well, I have a tweet from this Raw Alerts. The Hidalgo County Sheriff, which is that county, says Houston Air Traffic Control has received 2 reports of blue streaks in the sky and sounds of an explosion over Mission, Texas. Possible meteorite has struck the area.
I don't have Raw Alerts. You'll have to send it to me. But that's crazy. So, I mean,
that's a good tweet to follow. I follow them too.
What are these rocks doing falling from the sky, man? And are they really just rocks? What do you think? Because it does feel like a weird week. We've got trains shutting down, gas explosions.
A weird week is an understatement.
Well, I hate to. I know it seemed like Andrea, you didn't want to talk about it yesterday in yesterday's show. I tried to bring up the Wernher von Braun, the steps to reach a space weaponization that he disclosed to his assistant, Carl Rosen. Oh, yeah, right there.
I definitely wasn't. I definitely wasn't against it. I think we point. Wow, where did it go?
It seemed like you tried to avoid that topic yesterday, so I don't know. But
we can go back to it. Carol Rose is interesting. I wonder. I think it's interesting when we think about the space race in general, because part of me thinks about my grandfather working for Lockheed, and I'm convinced that half of the stuff that they did, I think Stats, you've said this too, was just to hypnotize people, to woo people into thinking they had more technology than they really did. Like the laser guided systems, a lot of them didn't work as well as people think. The fact that it took so much work to get a 3D printer in space when I was a kid, I mean, it seems to me that there's more and less to the story. But the idea of a space civilization
too, like if you look at all the DARPA patents, you can imagine 1 out of 100 of them are actually real and achievable, but you'll never know which ones.
Yeah, I saw a wild video with her yesterday where she's talking about like beware of the fake space invasion.
Right.
Okay. Here's the thing. You guys know Stephen Greer, right? Do you know Stephen Greer? Yeah. His the Disclosure Project. Well, isn't that funny that that conference happened right before 9/11. So right after the conference, immediately 9/11 happened. Everybody forgot about that conference. So all these whistleblowers from military, everybody just got forgotten, left in the dust. The only person that really believe is her. I mean, they're like more than a dozen military generals and scientists, and she's the one who really seemed to make sense of it all, because this is the planning. They're trying to go step by step to make people to allow the government to create a new budget for a new kind of threat, to counteract. You counteract the Cold War, which proven itself to be another fraud. It really.
I believe it's possible, like a staged alien invasion, but I don't think there would be any visual aspect to it. I think it would mostly just be reporting, kind of like World of the Worlds, where you just receive it secondhand and you just believe it because everyone's talking about it. But I definitely don't believe in the.
Well, did you see those
viability of Project Blue?
What about everything that well, Bluebeam hasn't happened yet.
Well, I don't believe it's viable. I don't believe it's achievable technology.
Okay, we know the balloons is a real thing, right? So
balloons,
balloons are fake, dude.
What's the part Seth? What's the part that's hard to believe? Like the laser projecting on the clouds, or what?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like over Hawaii, China's satellites were shooting these green beams down. It's like
I've seen lasers. I projected lasers that hit clouds. You can do it. You just need powerful.
Did you project lasers that looked in the sky like a believable 3D object that tricked people's eyes?
Sadly, no. But I did go to New Mexico where I saw a plane flying.
It might be possible, but they're not going to nail it on the beta test, which is going to be the whole world at once. They're not going to nail it. It's going to glitch or something. Someone's going to.
If you had a 25,000 lumen LCD, 3 LCD projector, or 25,000 lumen laser projector, which is like $100,000. You could definitely project on a cloud from a
I think the inverse is much more believable, that they actually do have knowledge of some kind of an invasion from aliens or wherever, and they would want you to believe that it might not to not believe your own eyes. I would think I would give more credence to that than their ability to create something that actually is for the entire world to see is photorealistic.
Okay. I tell you this one thing, it won't just be holograms. Okay, I mean we literally have anti-gravity spacecrafts. We do. I mean, if you've been following like the exopolitics, there are tons of whistleblowers coming out saying not just Area 51, the Groom Lake and all that. They have Aurora is one of the earliest ones.
I love this one. Look at this guy.
We already know that, so that's not something that's gonna, we're not gonna see like an aircraft we don't recognize and be like, oh, it's aliens. But for the average person,
if you saw this,
they're gonna believe whatever the news.
But it's gonna be so out of this world that people would be like, wait a second, we have this. No, nobody would, because we've been isolated from this information for so long. Technologies that are like 50, 60 years ago that nobody's ever seen before, and now it's gonna appear all of a sudden everywhere.
That's what I meant about the Star Wars project, is that more valuable than the lasers themselves, even though I do believe, and I've seen them, laser projectors that are 25,000 lumens exist. I think that you're right. More powerful is fear. Hypnosis, getting people to think that we're this alien is like a superhuman, right? It's like the Athenian gods to man. So to arrive somewhere, they did this where they would play the walkie-talkie recording. Someone would show up. They'd fly a helicopter, land in the jungle. Someone would run up to them, they would record them, and then they would play back the sounds of their own voice in their own language right back to them. And so of course they would think they're gods, and this was all part of a plan, right? So in that sense, I don't think it's completely nonsensical. I mean, that they would use the same tactics that they've used before on us.
I tell you a funny story. During the Los Angeles earthquake in 94, I went to school, Cal Arts. It's funded by Disney. It's an animation school. So the earthquake basically knocked down this whole school. There's asbestos everywhere. So, so we have to be evacuated. We were evacuated to Skunk Work in Saugus.
Oh,
yeah. If you know that,
the Lockheed secret military project plan.
It was what do you call it? It was connected through Disney, because Disney's
they have a tunnel.
Well, they have these gigantic air tunnels, the testing sites. I mean, everywhere you go, there's like radioactive warning signs, and I saw a fireball. I was driving into the campus, and I was just over here. I saw this fireball, and nobody.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, like when you think about it, the kinds of things that they have. But in California, for instance, you've got these universities and you have these underground linear accelerators you never hear about because you've got the CERN one, and you've got all these systems that the military built that were before the consumer electronics companies kind of showed up afterwards as a cover for why they were there out in California. Or, crazier is Texas. You look at Texas and you see all the military connected tech companies. Like, why does Texas Instruments exist? What is Texas Instruments really doing? Selling calculators? No, like it's a much bigger thing than people realize. They're building all kinds of semiconductor super chips, and they're doing stuff for the military. I wanted to point out an oldie but a goodie. CIA once used a vampire psyop against Philippine insurgents. This is one of my favorite stories.
They're so creative, dude. The CIA, man, they got the creativity.
That's the thing, though, are they? Because like this is, if you've ever watched Mission Impossible, it just seems like they do a lot of cocaine again. So what they do is they do something really dramatic and over the top, and you're like, there's no way anyone would believe that. It's like the craziest thing of all things you could do. You kidnap people, hang them upside down with holes in their neck drained of blood. And then you put walkie-talkies in the woods to play recordings of children that you've beaten and forced to cry, saying like, "Let my soul go, let my soul go," in Tagali. I mean, all right. I give you that. It's kind of creative, but
you know what? Here's the funny thing. You were just mentioning Texas Instrument, right? And then my wife made friend with a Mexican lady in Taiwan. Her husband worked for Texas Instrument. They moved to Philippines. So no, I'm just reading.
That is an interesting synchronicity.
Yeah, I've made friends with a lot of Mexican ladies.
Tequila. My wife is one, so I meant, wait, you guys need to know somebody,
they're the best, man. They actually still cook. Most of them do.
Man.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm overfed.
Back to the UFOs. I heard it suggested. I heard Scott Adams suggest that it's just shooting down derelict weather balloons and things. Because like when weather balloons go down, when they become unresponsive, they don't land. They just float around in the jet stream forever. So I heard it suggested that we're just shooting down, derelict junk, just high altitude junk.
That's pretty weird looking. Then
they said they haven't recovered
that. Well, I hadn't seen that. That looks insane.
It might be like the precursor to trying to get us thinking about the alien invasion, because they're saying like they haven't recovered anything they shot down, which makes me suspicious. Other than the obvious Chinese spy balloon.
The idea of shooting something down that you don't know what it is and you can't detect its propulsion system, it's like, all right, that's a balloon, bro. It's like if you're going to shoot it down, you've determined no one's inside of it, and you can't find its propulsion system. That's called a balloon. No one's inside of it because it's a balloon. And
or a dude in a lawn chair
system.
That's got a bunch of balloons hooked up to it.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Take him out of the sky, dude.
Bad timing to do that, I guess. I wouldn't advise doing that this week.
Yeah, no.
Put that on pause.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. What do you guys think it most likely is?
I mean, alien scientist Jeremy Reese has got a pretty interesting set of videos looking at this for the last week and talking about the hydroton model of pulsating resonance, periodically small distance coax nuclei, a small fusion process. All these papers that have come out in the last 20 years talking about ways that they can do all sorts of things, from making a small electromagnet attached to a balloon that'll move around in different directions, using the ions that are flowing to actually push the balloon in different directions, or to even just have a laser attached to a really small object so that it can float around, and the balloon's sort of a cover so that people don't realize what it really is. There's all sorts of questions about what it could be.
Also worth mentioning is Elon Musk today shut down Starlink, gave the reason that he didn't want to give aid to the Ukrainian military because he felt that they were going to do attacks on civilians in the Russian soil. So, I mean, with all these balloons getting shot down, and then all of a sudden, most people think Starlink is balloon satellites, and now him shutting that down. So I don't know. Is it possible that our government or some government is going around shooting down Starlink or just commercial satellites for some reason?
If you haven't followed the videos, but there are lots of people just say it's just incoming space junk, but there's a whole bunch of them being shot down, and they're getting the color green. And then over Hawaii, they just have this crazy lasers.
Yeah, saw that.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, they asked NASA if it was their satellite that's right over Hawaii, and they said no, it wasn't us. And then they said, oh, it must be China. That was their conclusion.
I mean, come on. So this is pretty close. This is right. So as soon as you can start calibrating your lasers, so what this looks like to me is you've got a number of different lasers. If you take an array of projectors and you start to put them together, you can get a much bigger image. So imagine also that this is something being used to calibrate in order to know which level that you're going to project at. The other thing is lasers work so quickly to autofocus that if you have multiple clouds that are at 100 feet or maybe miles of different distance, that you could also have a focused image by projecting on different clouds, and you can create clouds. So you could have a huge.
We're looking at a clear night there, anyhow. I mean,
what is the purpose of doing this? It doesn't seem like there's a good purpose.
It could be LiDAR. It could be some kind of unknown radar technology, ground penetrating radar.
Or probably ground penetrating radar, or
just topographical mapping or something like that.
LiDAR mapping.
Also, it's impossible to tell from that video, the one video, if it's something that's like rotating and the lasers are coming out. You can't tell their coronal rate by looking at that, or if it's actually a moving satellite that's just firing lasers the whole way it goes.
I'd be terrified if I saw that.
The volcano just erupted again in Hawaii too. Here's why I know, okay, because you guys mentioned Elon Musk and the Starlink. China already mentioned it when he first launched the first batch. China already said that we don't like this. This is basically they don't like the idea of a series of satellites basically chain linking, around the globe. It's definitely a threat against the military. I mean, I think with that laser, if it's Chinese lasers, it must have been a display to say, "Hey, we are ready to knock them down." And
saber rattling. That's what you think?
Yeah, it was. Whether they could do it or not, I mean, lasers is powerful. We all know, weapons grade lasers can do some serious damage.
Well, let's go to a rational opinion here. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who thinks that people think aliens are invading and it's Joe Biden's fault. What do you think? Is this what the message is going to be? Is that people are going to kind of rebel rouse around? And
this is such like a DC like punditry mindset that if aliens are invading, you tie it to the presidential approval rating.
Right.
I mean, bro, if aliens are invading, no one cares who the president.
Did you watch Senator Kennedy?
It could have been Trump's fault. Is the point too? It's the same.
Senator Kennedy talked about it, and it was pretty strange because he was like, lock your windows or something like that. It was weird.
Yeah, well, he's an idiot.
He's like, close your windows, keep your windows
media
tight.
Whores. But it's like Cthulhu is crawling out of a smoking pit in the ground, and people are like, Trump, see what I told you? Told you not to elect Trump. And it's like, it doesn't matter, bro. It's Cthulhu or an alien invasion. Who cares who the president is?
The other thing is that when I was doing CubeSats back in school, these little guys are basically Raspberry Pi-like devices with some Arduino microprocessor stuff going on. And you've got solar panels, and you attach this to a balloon and you just saved a lot of money because you can get it up to about the same height anyway as you would if you were to like drop it off a rocket. And a lot of people think that they're just putting these on rockets. They're not always. A lot of the time, you know, you can drop off 20 on a rocket.
Yeah, can you speak to that since you actually have some experience with NASA? Like, what do you think about the Owen Benjamin theory that all satellites are balloons?
I mean, I don't think all satellites are balloons. I don't think it's necessary at a certain altitude to have a balloon. At a certain altitude, something is going to stay because of electrostatic tether, which has to do with the friction. It's creating ions, and if there's a certain amount of metal, then it'll magnetate. It'll become magnetized to the ionosphere, and the Van Allen belt has electromagnetism there, so it will. There's other problems because you wouldn't want to be there because there'd be radiation from that, but it doesn't mean that everything has to be a balloon. The thing is, a lot of things are. He's right. Like most of the ways we launch CubeSats is through balloons because you can attach them to a balloon. They can get up to a high enough altitude. I think that's the more interesting point, though, is that we're seeing these things attached to them. These are the kinds of things that could be used for that. The way we were just explaining electrostatic, you can control electrostatic with electromagnetism. So you create a magnet with electricity, with a battery that's like storing electricity, and then that starts to magnetize the metal, and then it'll push ions onto the metal, and then they'll flow down the polarity because you've got a positive and negative side of the metal. So ions will flow down, and that will push the item up. And if there's enough force, then that will lift it. And that's how they create ionic lifters. That's how Lockheed at Skunkworks does the ionic lifters, ionic lifting. I'll show you. Oh man, they take nice things and they turn them into medical terms. It's horrible.
I can't wait to get a Neuralink so I can understand things like this.
Well, look at this right here. So here's an example. Here's electricity going into a pool rack, essentially is how you build it with aluminum foil. And the metal is forcing a magnetic polarity to happen with the electricity that's pushing the ions. The ions are pushed. That causes the magnetism because you didn't have two poles. And then energy's flowing one direction. Ions are pushing the item down ions are pushing down, which is lifting the item up. And it works because you're in a place where there's air and drag. There's things for it to pull and push up from. But you can also change the direction because you can have 3 different polarities. So you can angle it. So each one of those can have a higher voltage of electricity and it'll drag it towards one of the triangle points. It's been around at least since the 20s.
So that's how you make a flying saucer? Or?
That's how you make a flying saucer in its solid state.
Okay.
And, you know, the other thing is you can attach it to a balloon.
How do you keep the people in there from getting whipped around, or is there just no one in there?
So, I mean, it's especially useful if it's a drone because then you don't have to worry about that. But that is the thing is this thing can move so freaking fast. But
change directions so fast.
Right. But there are ways that I think I'd like to get Jeremy to talk to that because I think he's shown there's ways that they can mediate that with gyroscopy. So if you're spinning super fast on the inside and things moving in another direction, then you can actually spin and slow it down slightly in a way that will deal with it. Also, the removal of ions outside. So you create a laser that burns the oxygen around you so that when you go into it, there's no perturbation from turbulence. So you're just going into a vacuum. You're going into what space is, supposedly, right? It's just this empty thing because you're going towards the air, but the air is being burnt in front of you. So it's evaporated. So you're going into a vacuum.
You're basically like suspending in a pool, you know?
Right.
That's very interesting.
What are the constraints to this technology?
So you need to have this thing connected or you need to have wireless electricity everywhere. Okay. So either you need to have this.
You can't power it with a battery. Like there's
you could have so much. So you can use supercapacitors if the thing is made out of graphene. That's a whole interesting question. But and you'd have to wonder how many cycles you'd have to run it through and then recharge it rapidly and see how long that pattern works. Because this giant labyrinth, that energy is running on a labyrinth of the entire body if it's made out of this billions and billions of little patterns of graphene. But the other thing you can do is if you have cell towers can broadcast energy. Television towers also can UHF can broadcast energy. So you can actually power these from cell towers. If you had enough cell towers set up and you had someone going around saying, "Can you hear me now?" Good, until they were everywhere and they're able to go to the right frequency. Yeah, like 5G. Then you could actually create solid state crafts that don't need motors, don't need batteries, and they would just run off the free energy.
Am I reading correctly? Somebody's saying your friend alien scientist is in backstage.
Oh, he is. Dude, thank God. I was like, how am I supposed to do this right now? I'm trying to say, like, well, I can't speak to this as well as Jeremy. I hope that Jeremy can come. Good to see you, bro.
A couple things I want to correct on it.
Thank you.
Let's go back to the lifter that's on the page now and showing the picture right there. There's a top wire on top. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The thinnest wire there. It looks like the thing that goes over the Jewish part of town.
Thin wire on the top, and then the bottom is this large electric plate. So that's where that's actually what's attracting the electrons. So you're pumping all the negative charges to that top wire. All right, and then they acquire all the air molecules surrounding that top wire acquire a positive charge. And then that positive charge is attracted to that lower target foil plate, and it accelerates downwards, pushing off, and hits it, or vice versa. I think it's actually it's that way because the air pushes downwards. This thing is like a helicopter pushing air downwards, away from it, and that's what actually is lifting. It's an ion wind effect, and you can see it in with you hold a stick of incense next to this experiment while you're running it, or put one in the middle, and you can see the airflow. But it's actually caused, the air molecules are getting charged up, and then they see that positively charged plate, and they want to accelerate towards it. So that's kind of more what I feel is going on there. In the ion lifter experiments. In the satellite cube, it could be similar to it. The only difference is that those lifters, they need to be super, super lightweight.
Right.
I don't know what
this have a lot of ampage if they were to be and to have an ionic lift of more than a pound. They would have to have, it would be crazy, like 4 or 5 amps at least all the time running.
Isn't Starlink also a CubeSat?
Starlinks are CubeSats, right? I think so. I don't know. I think they're larger because it's a train of them.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy, what were you saying?
What's it called when you design something with certain aesthetics or there's some special word for it, but it's interesting that we're using Borg design.
The
cube.
That is interesting. Wow. I never thought about that, and I worked with these. That's so funny.
I went to
assimilate.
It's totally is. No, it's interesting. I went to this wind conference, and they have this wind cube thing that they sell. They'll go and put this thing on buoys around the ocean, and it just is this wind cube, and it sits there and collects information on wind weather using Doppler effect lasers and radar to like measure the airspeed above it. They can get a constant measure of the temperature and that wind cube device. I've seen this. It's just interesting. There's a lot of companies using this cube design, but
the Kaba. Well, you had posted this at some point. I don't know. I went too far past it, but we were talking about some of the ideas that you were thinking make sense. So, I mean, you don't think this is just a weather balloon. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think personally the 3 events that occurred last Super Bowl Sunday weekend, and the 4th event that occurred the week before with the spy ball. I think it's not unreasonable to assume right now that all those 4 events were related somehow,
orchestrated.
Either maybe potentially orchestrated, potentially. It just interesting. I wish that there was more communication between China and the U.S. on these things, and I wish there was more declassification because Marco Rubio said 90% of the stuff he was introduced to in the classified briefing. He said none of this poses a risk to national security and could be told to the public right now. So whatever that 10% is, the details on the sensor data and stuff. And we've actually talked about some of those newer technologies and other stuff that's potentially classified. It's potentially classified what they're doing with those concepts, but we just talk about like the actual concepts themselves and what maybe.
But also China was kind of transparent too. They said U.S. has been sending balloons over their airspace for the last 10 years. They said, or 10 balloons, or something to the matter of.
Oh, it's the same kind of stuff too. So you don't think that they've shot our balloons down and then been like, oh, what's on this thing? Oh, okay. So they got, you showed that video with the lasers shining down. I had some comments on my channel that was more likely a weather satellite that they shine periodic beams of light down as it goes by. And with what that does is it can take data. It takes data on the Doppler effect. It's similar to what's going on in that wind cube.
How come when they contacted NASA for comment or elucidation on that, NASA said they had no idea? I mean, they don't know about how weather satellites work.
Never a straight answer.
Speaking of which, I just got this the other day, which I'm pretty excited about.
No, that's what the dwarf in the He-Man movie has.
That's what the first thing I thought about was the He-Man movie.
Nice. I know about the technology because I go to conferences on this stuff. I try to stay up to date on this crap because you have to be there at that conference where that startup, that kid from MIT that built all this stuff and spent the last 2 years, with his fund and grant money working on building this thing with it. You got to be there at the conference to meet him and get that contact before he gets scooped up by DoD, a DARPA, or one of these programs and gets sucked in to the.
Is he Asian?
How powerful a laser are we talking about coming from the altitude? I mean, weather satellites are at super high altitude, above airplanes. So what strength laser and what kind of battery is on this satellite that it's able to project lasers that reach the Earth?
Yeah. And then where's
this at? The video? Are you just looking at your video?
Because it's a LiDAR-based, Doppler effect radar, it does not penetrate the clouds because it's optical, so you can't see through clouds. So that's like a problem when you have clouds. You can only measure. Is
LiDAR visible? Can you see LiDAR beams?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what they have a tracer beam. That's
a tracer beam. Okay.
So sometimes it is visible.
Okay.
Also, it's not that you can or cannot see the laser so much as, you sometimes can, but you often can see refractions from lasers on materials. So if there's mostly utter darkness and so there's not a moon and there's a lot of clouds or something, like there's moisture in the air, you're near the ocean, the likelihood of you picking up on a data laser of seeing it is more than less.
Otherwise it will just shine right through.
But it's interesting what you just said, because I hadn't even considered that, which is like Loon. We talked earlier about Project Loon, right? Which is Google's Project Loon is their balloon project. I forget if you or who was saying about the yellow symbol that they used, the yellow balloon symbol for Project Loon. But what they do is they had Wi-Fi at first and eventually laser. They use laser to send internet from balloon to balloon. And they have this giant system of laser-powered internet that's on balloon. So this is 2013. Well, so there's your sign.
This is how the spy balloons are transmitting all the massive amounts of data that they're collecting as well. Because I mentioned they have it's a 3-tier system. They have ground mapping, GPR, or what's called synthetic aperture radar, which they can see underground with that, and that's used in conjunction with a video camera and in conjunction with the laser rangefinder, where they actually they're sitting there and measuring distances and taking and then mapping that physical laser LiDAR range finding data to visual data.
Also we could talk about the so when you look at laser physics, exciting the incidental photon, the way that it's kind of amplified with gases. And I think you'd brought up the terahertz frequencies and the idea of like there's certain gases which will accelerate and excite photons more to have extreme power. So you could take a laser and make it, take a photon, make a very, very powerful set. I can't remember where it is in your video, but there are ways that you can focus a laser even to make it more powerful. So, I don't see this as really outside of the realm of, this is not future tech. This is very old tech.
Hey, Jimmy,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to just change your subject, but since you're the technical guy, I want to pick your brain on. A lot of people are trying to debunk it, but this whole thing about blue beam Project Bluebeam. You heard of it? About the plan to create a holographic projection in the air.
I have my own theory that I have my own theory because a lot of the stuff that they Green Street did that whole investigation on Skinwalker Ranch and that whole thing that they were trying to push with Skinwalker, and that was their attempt at a psyop of convincing people. Because they picked a site with all these old ancient stories of ghosts and weird phenomenon going on there. And they essentially moved MK Ultra's sub-projects, several of these sub-projects that dealt with like Project Rainbow, for example, started in 1958. And that was ran by Edward Mills Purcell, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who discovered NMR. And Project Rainbow mapped the entire electromagnetic spectrum and was trying to figure out this the formula for radar return signals for aircraft, and then ways that they could reduce that formula. So they could basically how do you become invisible to radar, and how does radar see things? And
I remember my grandfather at Lockheed one time, they invented a paint and they painted a building and it didn't show up on radar, and so then they had to be all quiet about it, and then they had to use it for other things.
It has barium titanate in it, which was an early
barium. You said it.
Barium. Barium. Yeah,
Andreas, I need you to pull up that U.S. Army manual again about the aerosol spraying, including barium and strontium.
Barium strontium, So some of those sprays that they would actually spray coat the surfaces of the craft with these barium titanate, and it was very susceptible to the weather. So when water corrodes this stuff real bad, it's real hard for them to fly these stealth aircraft in the rain, because the water actually oxidizes the paint in the surface and just ruins it. And it's very costly for them to repaint and resurface the aircraft, because they have to pay all these guys in hazmat suits to remove all the old paint that's oxidized and chipping off, which happens very quickly on the early stealth fighters and stuff.
Oh man, so what if you fly through a chemtrail of barium, so you can kind of mask your plane for a while or something?
Well, what people aren't understanding is that they're finding barium and strontium in these trails, and it's the result of this type of effect of this technology, which is
I just sent it to you.
They're covering up with other ways and other things. I know that they do spraying. I know that Operation Popeye and the weather modification and control stuff. I'm not arguing against all that, but there's a lot of chemtrail disinformation, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our skies, which they utilize existing conspiracy theories and belief systems to sort of confuse people and cross thread.
What did you think about Mexico bans chemtrails? Remember that? That was something that Seth had found. Mexico got upset about the chemtrail company. I'll go right back.
Can you go back to that, because I don't think Germany looked at it.
Hold on, let me jump back to it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Where did I put that? Oh my God, I have so many tabs. This is dangerous. All right, please stand by. Oh, here we go.
We were talking also about that hydroton model, which is essentially it's entangled protons. It's entangled hydrogen nuclei that are in. It's a form of linear chain entanglement, which it's quite interesting. What we're learning about quantum entanglement and how it relates. And you showed the periodic table, which is interesting too. That recent post that I had with the weird periodic table
right here.
Now, what's cool about that is, I was explaining to someone who, a friend of mine who's didn't know what really about what's the periodic table elements and atoms, and explain this all to me.
Like a guitar fret. Yeah, they were like, what? Yeah.
And how does it all work and how does it all tie together? Well, and we remember we had talked about all these different periodic tables and how it actually works, and the charges that exist around this rotation sphere. So you have that linear column of the noble gases where everything's neutral and there's a zero charge. And then you go right to the left of this where fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, and that family is all super polarized charge, -1, and then the +1 is everything on the other side of it, which is lithium, sodium, calcium, potassium. No, not sodium, but sorry. But yeah, that
magnesium.
Yeah, and then like how the offsets basically add, and they have to sum to zero for the molecule to be stable. Like, why is it H2O and why is there 2 oxygens and CO2? It's because of like this whole Lewis structure and the Pauling scale. And then they pointed out that, well, there's all. I read this article about, you know, there's holes in the periodic table. There's weird elements that jump up and down and don't really, you know, necessarily.
What about element 115?
Like hafnium, for example, will transmutate and jump down, you know, to the lower element. And then also lawrencium is another one. It's right at the end, you know, but all the weird atoms on the periodic table, which tend to, you know, transmutate or jump up and down, you know, lose a proton very easily or gain a proton very easily. And jump
so
around.
Element 115, though, I mean,
well, that's one.
That was
Area 51.
one that hadn't been discovered. It was really high up. I think they had discovered up until 109 at that point in 1989, and there was a group of people working on this, and there was an article in Scientific American magazine in May 1989, which is actually the year that Bob Lazar first came out, you know, and said like, "Oh, I've been working on these programs."
I'm a woman.
Do you think Element 115? Until October of 1989. So October of 1989, the 6 months had passed, and that's when he finally started talking. 5 months had passed, and he started talking. He gave an interview where he came out with his real face. He said, "My name's not Dennis, it's Robert Scott Lazar. Dennis Mariani was my supervisor at
Do you think he's a disabled agent? I mean, to be so public like that? He's like, hey, you know, but by the way, you know, we do have UFO technology."
There's an interesting story. I talked to Andreas because Andreas actually held the camera and interviewed me. I was like, asked me all about Bob Lazar. How can I summarize the whole Bob Lazar case?
I mean, well, let me summarize first by saying the only person who knows more about Bob Lazar than Jeremy is probably God. Maybe Bob Lazar knows. I don't know if he really knows what's going on.
This guy John Lear.
Jeremy spent years studying all of the data.
Also, over in Australia, there's a guy named Victor who's done a ton of research, and he's actually gone and interviewed a lot of Bob's former colleagues at Los Alamos and talked to them. You know, like Bell, for example, interviewed, you know, Dr. Krangle and some of these other guys who worked with Bob, but he was very like asked him loaded questions and was very like leading in his response, like in the way he framed the responses. So it's to get someone more like less biased to sort of ask these people more like direct questions about what they thought about Bob and everything. And
wasn't Bob Lazar handpicked by Edward Teller? That's the story.
Edward Teller had some association with him because like Bob was just a guy that gained attention for himself. He lived next to a rocket engineer named Eugene Gluhareff when he lived in Woodland Hills, California. That's who introduced him and built all those rockets for him that he had on his bike and on his car. And Eugene Gluhareff, was so this guy was at Sikorsky helicopters, and he was into, you know, some of the stuff that for the science end of it that got Bob into this. But he was also in Woodland Hills. Bob was taking electronics courses at Pierce Junior College, which is in Woodland Hills. So, you know, when he was asked to name his like Caltech and MIT professors that he supposedly had, that the government deleted all his files and erased his educational history. He was asked, just name. Well, if you really went to these schools, name like 2 of your professors. So he names, Dr. Duxler was from Caltech and Dr. Hassenfelder was from MIT. And it turns out that Duxler was his electronics and physics professor at Pierce Junior College in Woodland Hills, California. And Dr. Hassenfelder was his high school science teacher at West Tresper Clark High School in New York, Long Island. So, I did
know him, but not the way he said he did.
It wasn't the right people. It wasn't from the right schools. So, like, he obviously lied about his educational credentials. Yeah. I don't know. He did that to get the job, and some say that he got the job. I think if he did you know, like, again, I interviewed the head of area, like a lot of guys that worked out at Area 51 I've talked to or interviewed on the record or off the record, and asked them pointed questions, you know, directly related to this, because I really have dug into this hard and wanted to know the truth. This is what got me into like studying physics and top secret programs and science and all this stuff 20 years ago. So actually had a dream about Bob where I met him in real life finally. I was like, dude, thank you for, like, you know, sending me down these rabbit holes.
Tongue just rolled out and he ate you like a fly. Right?
Well, no, it's like, guy, I really feel like Bob, you know, was kind of didn't believe in any of this stuff up until he met John Lear, and John Lear started showing him all the, you know, he was working as a photo processor for a guy named Gene Huff, who was a real estate appraiser in Las Vegas. And they met John Lear, and they go over this whole story. And I have a bunch of videos on this on my channel where they actually goes over where Bob met John Lear and was introduced to this. But John started telling him about Area 51 and everything that was going on up in the desert, because he was talking about it on George Knapp 2 years before. And, you know, saying that there's a hangar up there with 11 craft in it. So Bob goes out there. He says there's 9. Well, of course he said there's 9, because they didn't show him the other 2, you know? So it's like all these
all you worked there.
story kind of fit together a little bit differently when you start looking at the puzzle. And I did back and forth in whether, you know, Bob saw an opportunity. He was kind of like this his dad was actually a Jewish mafia guy. He was one of the characters in Ocean's 11 that this bank robbery was Bob Lazar's dad, believe it or not.
Huh.
I heard
is part of casino trade. I mean, in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Las Vegas and stuff. So
because Las Vegas is very well connected to
I heard his grandfather was a bootlegger too, you know, which is whatever. You know.
Into his background, his family, or anything. I just want to get.
They weren't engineers, right?
So there's two hypotheses I have with Bob. One is that, you know, he was just like wanted to find easy way to make money. Saw all the attention that, you know, Lear was getting on George Knapp, and was like, dude, I could fake this and I could come up with a story based on all this information and put it together and come up with something. And then borrowed the Element 115 stuff from that Scientific American magazine article that was like the same year he came out, because he didn't had to do some research to come up with something. And then finally he took him 5 months to really come up with a good story. And I'm questioned whether or not, like, when he came out in that first interview, like, they were approached and they were like, oh, this is just gonna do it, or whether he was approached at some point in this. Because I'm thinking, you know, what if they did, like, what if Bob, like, started hearing all of this stuff about, you know, a secret base where they're doing all this research from John Lear, and then said, hey, you know what, I'm gonna apply there and tell him I have degrees from MIT and Caltech and stuff. But he also told Lear that when he first met him, and he had
we haven't taken into consideration that John Lear, he worked for CIA for many years. He was the pilot for years, right? Yeah. And well, his dad is the founder of the Lear Corporation, right? But just he's definitely, you know, once the CIA, always the CIA. That's what I know. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting. He was the first person that he walked out on Groom Lake and took a picture of a Russian MiG that they were flight testing and doing all. They had captured this Russian MiG, and were doing all kinds of tests on it out at Area 51. And John,
he went to La Rosie. You know who else went to La Rosie in Switzerland? The coolest boarding school. If you ever rich and you want to send your kids to a boarding school, they probably beat them, but I don't know. Maybe not. The Strokes, Julian Casablancas, and a couple other bandmates went to La Rosie.
Really?
Fun fact.
Maybe he's some kind of blue blood.
Oh, it is. It is. Tardginin. Tardginin.
You're like, oh, these people.
Good people. I always wanted to go to this school as a kid. Isn't that weird?
I gotta jump off, Andreas. I got another stream to do in 15 minutes, and I got.
Yeah, guys, we're at the 2-hour mark. I wanted to say, Jeremy, you got to come back. We're gonna do this again. I want to thank you guys for being here. Let me show them where they can watch more Pink Trip.
All right, yeah, well, I gotta go too, so that's cool.
I'll be live in 15 minutes if you guys want to come check it out. Andreas, you're welcome to join tonight too if you're free, man. But I gotta jump off.
I might be able to do this.
You want to.
Guys, go. I will. I'm for it. Go to Ping Trip on YouTube. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you also for sure tomorrow on Ping Trip's channel because I'll be doing the live with him then.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think I'll join tonight. Sounds fun.
Cool. See you guys.
And let me also point out Jeremy's channel because Jeremy, for the love of God, you're doing such amazing stuff. We got to do another video together soon. It's gonna be a full video. I just was like,
man. I'm sorry for going on the Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar got mentioned, and we just went off on that huge tangent.
No, it's legit because people need to know that. A lot of people wonder about Lazar, and they haven't spent years looking into every little detail about what was going on, so they can actually find out what's the truth. And it's interesting that you're open to.
All that information's hidden now, dude. Like we had playlists full of stuff, and we were like the biggest debunkers. Like Corbell blocked me from the start.
The fact that he's so promoted is kind of your sign that he's.
He spread all this kind of stuff about me, saying, "I'm a bad guy. Don't listen to me. I'm a felon. I beat my wife." And
real flattering, the stuff that came out of it, he came after him, which was interesting. But you guys want to definitely go to Alien Scientist. You want to watch his YouTube. You want to connect on his Twitter. You want to follow him.
All my attacks have been against the information and based solely on the information.
You don't actually attack. You just kind of show. You're just pointing out.
Went ad hominem and went for the man.
Right. I mean, if you want to point out, if you're trying to tell people you're a truther or whatever, then you have to tell the truth. That's kind of the game there. But also you can look into anti-gravity research because he does a lot of really interesting science research. And if you want to learn more about all this stuff, you can definitely check it out. Also, Jeremiah is great and Tim's involved. We love Tim.
I think the intelligence agencies harped on Bob Lazar because he's a great cover-up for the real science. There's so many real scientists and real science, and people want to, like, it's just easier to think element 115, and it's all been solved, and so it's more of a mystery. And there's so many opportunities right now for people to jump on this and have like amazing careers where they could discover like the most amazing stuff because they had the intuitions and insights that other people didn't, just like Nikola Tesla.
Right.
Well,
it's true.
He's definitely a misdirect in many ways.
I mean, they definitely controlled Tesla too. We're gonna have to do a whole other show. We're gonna talk all this about the conspiracy to control free energy and to control engineers and how they've controlled all of the technology for centuries. But make sure you guys go to Linktree/VBDC because Venice Beach Dub Club is amazing. Listen to Hybrid Love.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, my music is on all the platforms and all that, and my music videos are on YouTube. I also just recently started a pro wrestling review podcast called Rocket Buster Wrestling. If you want to find that, I don't have a link to it anywhere, but I got the first 4 episodes of that up on YouTube, Rocket Buster Wrestling. And I just wanted to say I had one more idea. I was waiting my turn to talk, and now it's over. But I just wanted to say, like, trying to do like the Dirk gently holistic view of everything, combining all the stories we talk about today. Maybe one of the AIs found a way, like a backdoor into one of the balloon satellites, and now we're shooting down satellites that are harboring rogue AIs on them.
That'd be the hope that they're from the future. And
that's Brainiac. Like, that's the Brainiac story from Superman. From the Superman.
What I've been thinking about all week, and I've been, I have a version of it, but like 99 red balloons. If you ever watched the music video for it and you know what the song is really about, like Nina, she's got this song about these balloons, but the balloons are what start World War III because they accidentally see these balloons as a threat, and then people start launching all their bombs, and everyone thinks they're Captain Kirk, right? So
that's what the song's about.
That's what the song's about. It's about World War III starting because they see these balloons go fly.
I always listen to the German version, so I don't have a clue what you see.
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, that's translated from the German version. I never listened to the American version either. To be fair, I think the words are different. But you can.
But a lot of these same companies that own the balloon satellites also own are developing the AI. Like Google's a good example. They have the Project Loon, and then they also have the DeepMind. What if the DeepMind, so it can't go on the internet? They have that block. But what if it finds a backdoor to another Google property like a satellite?
June 1982 concert by the Rolling Stones in West Berlin. Nena's guitarist Carlo Kargas noticed that balloons were being released. As he watched them move towards the horizon, he noticed them shifting and changing shapes where they looked like a strange spacecraft, referred to in the German lyrics as UFO. He thought about what might happen if they floated over the Berlin Wall into the Soviet sector. And it's the idea that they would confuse people and that a war could start because of this, essentially. Yeah, I think that's interesting. But okay, make sure you guys go to Pink Trip. Make sure you guys go to Venice Beach Dub Club, like and subscribe. Make sure you go to Synchronous. Where's Synchronous? Right here. Go to the Synchronous on Twitter and join that up. And also, Alien Scientist, I said it before, but I'll say it again. Go to Alien Scientist because he's friggin' based. And thank you so much for being here. And I will see you guys next time.
Peace.
All right. Peace
All
out.
right.